Okay, salam everyone. For those who will be watching later, I don't expect there'll be many people watching right now because this was a sort of impromptu. I didn't schedule it or let anybody know that I was going to be doing it. So people will be watching it properly later. And it's really to have a conversation with my friend here. So this is Mohammed. I met him in the Aron Ra's stream where he's doing Quranic lessons, Quran lessons for the Infidel, right?
Yep.
And we're having talks over there, and I'm trying to give my views on there. And last time when we finished up, we continued having our own little conversation, which was after the stream, and me and Muhammad were having some nice conversations, dialogues. So I invited him, and he also suggested, why don't we, meet up somewhere else and have a talk. And so here we are. We've scheduled this. So this is Muhammad. Do you want to sort of introduce yourself a bit, or say anything you want?
Uh, we were just talking before the stream started about the label, which is ex-Muslim or a former Muslim. And I don't like labels in general, but like if I would choose a label to myself, it's certainly like a single label. Uh, it certainly won't be an ex-Muslim because, uh, like, I don't think people should be labeled by what they aren't, right? It's rather what people who they are. So when you see people carrying the label atheist or agnostic, like these labels, I really don't value so much. Uh, but like generally speaking, I am Mohammad Al Habash. I'm originally from Syria. I live now in Canada. I was born and raised a Muslim. Um, First 10 years in my life, I was in Saudi Arabia. That's my early sort of like memories of religion. As I moved to back home to Syria, my religious views changed. You know, I looked at like the religion in Saudi Arabia as kind of form of extreme religion. I don't mean like extremism or jihadism or anything like that. Just seemed to me to be too much. And that definitely was influenced by the religious views in Syria because a lot of people look at Saudis as Wahhabis, which is, I don't know if that's a correct label. Uh, but yeah, I was religious. I used to pray, memorize Quran, fast, do all these things. Probably till 25 when I didn't leave the religion in one piece, but it took a couple of years for me to completely leave the religion. But I remember when I was 30 that when I totally left the religion. So it took me around maybe 8 years on and off, searching and stopping till I reached that conclusion, uh,
Mm.
till I like left the religion.
Okay, nice. Whereabouts were you in Saudi? Because I lived there for around 6 years. First, I was actually in the north region. I was actually telling Mubarak that the last time we sort of spoke after hours. So I was in Sakaka, Al Jof region. Do you know about the region?
Not
It's like
really.
right in the north, yeah, close to Jordan,
Yeah, yeah,
Riyadh,
yeah,
and
yeah,
these
yeah.
places.
So I lived in the east. I lived in Al Khubar, if you know it.
Yeah, yeah, Al Khobar, Dammam, those areas. Yeah.
Yes, yes, next to the mom.
Mm.
I lived. Actually, it was nice. I loved it there, to be honest.
Yeah, people
Uh,
said Dammam was really nice. I mean, sorry guys about the background, baby, but that's how
yeah.
it is. But yeah, I've heard good things about Dammam and Khobar. I wanted to visit those areas, but I didn't. get to go. I basically, it was weird because my very first year in Saudi was with one company in Sakaka, like I said. Then I left. So I only worked 1 year there, and then I left and came back with a different company, and I worked in Riyadh, and that was for around 5 years or 4 years. Then I moved to Medina. I actually wanted to move to Yambur, which I really liked. I've visited Yambur a few times, and I like that city. Instead, we went to Medina for a year. And then after that, I went back to Sakaka, and I got to see the difference in Sakaka from the very first year that I was there to the last year when I left. Huge difference in just around 5, 6 years, how much it changed. I remember my first year there, literally you'd see no women outside in the street, zero, right? And the one or few times I did see women outside, they were in a group. They were all completely covered, no eyes showing, nothing, and in a group like this. And because me and my friends were like, I was with a Canadian friend of mine, Somali Canadian, and so we were driving around, and we saw these women come out from somewhere in this, and then as soon as they came out into the street, it was crazy because somebody was driving one way, and then straight away going and turned the car back around to follow them. I was like, what is this?
Man, these people are nuts.
Yeah. I mean, it's really because this is one of the things, right? Of all of this sort of intense, crazy kind of covering and shoving women. I mean, it used to be really bad in Saudi, right? They used to say that a woman would only leave her house twice, right? Once from her house to her husband's house, and then from her husband's house to the grave, right?
The cemetery, yeah.
Yeah. And I've actually spoken to people in Saudi, and this was a long time, a while back, who they would say that, men who'd say that they had never seen their mother's face since they were like however young, because after a certain age, she started covering her face even in front of her sons. But it's very weird. You see, the thing about it, I think it's a lot of this is very culturally based. And I'll tell you why. Like I was there, right, and with my wife, right. So my wife got to know this other woman, okay, because they both come from the same country, right? Now this guy, this Saudi guy, she was this friend of mine was married to a Saudi, okay, and so we went to at first we went to visit. The first time we went to his house, he was there, right? So he was there. It was me, another friend, okay. So me and my friend and this Saudi guy. All our wives were from the same nationality, so we wanted them to meet, okay. So we went to his house. And he met us, and we talked and stuff, and it was great, right? And then after that, I would always, I would drop my wife off to his place, or his wife would be at somebody else's place, and I would go and pick my wife and his wife up and drop them off. And for the next year or something, I would, when our wives were visiting different places, I would drive his wife around different places, and he had no problem with that, no issue with that. But conversely, his own brother, he would not even allow him to hear his wife's voice. His blood brother, he would not even allow him to hear his wife's voice. He didn't want that. So it's a very weird thing, yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, it's a very culturally oppressive time it was, because you'd find like even one of the scholars I have on this channel a lot. I've translated a few of his things. He would say, for example, why is it that we he was talking about himself, like in the South a long time ago. It never used to be a problem that a man, his wife would be, her face would be open and her hair showing, and to be with his brother without nobody even think of anything. It wouldn't even occur to their minds to think of anything strange happening. It would be complete, total trust and security. Nobody would not even enter anybody's minds. But now that's it. There's a culture which has become completely oppressive. He would say tagat, so become like a taghut on the people, that they can't get away from it. Whereas on the converse side, the same people who would be in Saudi, they would not be able to allow their wife to be, to even be heard. As soon as they travel outside the kingdom, somewhere else, they don't mind their wives not wearing the hijab, right? Or the scarf or anything. So it was a very strange time over there. Now, Sakaka, when I went back 6 years afterwards to that same city, it was very different. I would go to the mall, and there would be women there, their face uncovered. Foreign women would be, their hair would be out. It wouldn't be But it's crazy how things have changed. And the people I know who are still in Saudi, they tell me how much has changed now. Do you know any people still in Saudi? Do you keep in touch with any friends over there?
I have two friends, but it's been actually a while since I last contacted them. You reminded me of something actually. I remember when I was a kid, we used to go to the mosque and, memorize Quran and recite the Quran. And man, in that time, we were still learning about the word. We were still young. I remember we used to get our knowledge from the cassette tapes. We go to the store, we get like a lecture, right?
For the young people, cassette tapes are something you've never seen before.
Yeah, I know. But like the thing is, like I'm sure I'll like your audience are they may find this very strange or not even believe it. But like I remember when I was a kid, I used to like read in the books, Islamic books, and I read that chess is forbidden, cards are forbidden,
Yeah.
music is forbidden, and like a lot of things. The reason for it being forbidden is because it's a time waste,
Yeah.
And like now, if you tell people that these things are forbidden, they will like argue so much that it can't be,
Yeah.
But that what was the norm back then.
Yeah, it was like that. It was definitely like that. I don't know what happened, because of course this is a little bit in my time, a little bit before my time,
Yeah,
but I know even further back it wasn't like that, right? So in Egypt, Egypt never used to be like that, and then it became like that. I think a lot of the influence of Jamal ad-Din al-Afghani and Sayyid Qutb, right?
yeah,
That influenced a lot of things. Muslim
yeah,
Brotherhood influenced a lot of things, and so did, of course, can't ignore it, the Saudi sort of like founding of the Saudi state, and the discovery of oil money, and then the pumping out a lot of things all over the world. It changed things very drastically. There was a time, I think, also in Egypt they used to consider taps to be forbidden, and in Saudi, Hassan Malik was saying this. He's saying that there was a time where all the mosques in Friday khutbas and stuff, they would all be saying how it's forbidden for you to put up a satellite dish, right? Satellite dish. And whoever,
yeah.
yeah, and whoever does, هو غاش لرعيته, right? He is being and
You
ومأواه
reminded me.
جهنم.
No, actually, you remind me. We were kids, right? And one of my friends, we only had the like first Saudi channel, second Saudi channel, and I remember because we were next to Bahrain, we would catch the Bahrain TV, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my friend once they were in a compound, so they installed like a gigantic satellite for the entire building. And he was visiting his friend, and they had the TV open, and they see the like the news anchor, which is a
Yeah.
woman, and they would lose their mind, right? Because I don't know if you remember this, but I remember this vividly. The TV commercials, they will be exactly the same commercial, but the one on the Saudi channel, the woman will be wearing hijab.
Yeah, they had that, yeah.
It's such a strange
Because
time,
they're models, right? You can dress them up however
Yeah,
people
and
want to. Yeah.
it's exactly like the same scene, the same thing, but you see it in different channel. It's the woman without hijab, and on the
Yeah.
Saudi channel, it's the same advert, the same thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it was mad. I actually wasn't this. I do a weekly live stream. I'm probably going to stop it for a while, or at least slow it down. But I do a weekly live stream called Tadabburat, or Caravan of Quranic Contemplation. That's what I called it anyway. Where every week I'm trying to encourage people to ponder more deeply on the Quran, right? So,
yeah,
and every week I present something short from myself, 10, 15 minutes. Try to make it that much anyway, 20 minutes at most. and then invite people to come on and share any other insights that they may have. So I think wasn't last week or the week before that, I did one called Haram, right? And it's something which I noticed in Surah Al-An'am, right?
Yeah.
That it's the mushrikeen, right, who are always saying things are haram, 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 right? أَإِنَّكُمْ تَشْهَدُونَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ حَرَّمَ هَذَا. There's many verses in that surah where
Yeah.
the theme of it seems to be that it's the mushrikeen who are constantly trying to make things haram. It's not the other way around. Like people think that, for example, one criticism that people have of ex-Muslims is that they leave Islam because they want to make everything halal, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's the default is the opposite, where it seems to be it's the people who are who are more like the mushrikeen, have that mentality. They're the ones who are making everything haram, right? So they're the ones who are saying this is haram, this is haram, this is haram, right? So it's a very interesting thing which I found there, and I presented about that, and and that's why in the Quran it's actually pushing back against that, I think, right? In Surah Al-An'am, saying إنما حرم الله الفواحش, these sort of things, and that verse, تعال قل تعالوا أتلوا ما حرم ربكم عليكم. I will tell you what is haram. It's only these things, right? Only a few things. So it was very interesting because I thought that jabbed up, because we did have this wave of things where everything is haram. It's still around. There are still people who will say, most things are haram. So it's very interesting. Yeah. You were mentioning before. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, sorry. I just want to say it's like times are changing, right? And it's funny how when you look at things, how they move slowly, right? And eventually things they change. So I'm happy for the change that's happening in Saudi Arabia, but at the same time, I'm really saddened because people had to live through this for a long time, and especially women, that wasn't fair at all for them.
Yeah, definitely. Do you think it will change back to becoming worse? Because remember, because it used to be better than this, then it got worse, right? It used to be actually. I remember sort of pre. I think it's pre-World War II or something, right? Where in Turkey and things, people, it never used to be the way it is. I mean, looking at photos of you probably see these photos of your grandparents or that generation. They didn't have that kind of strict mentality where everything is haram, haram, haram. That was very confined. It was just a few of the sort of the religious and fanatic people. They were the ones who were saying that, but the majority of people, it wasn't affecting them. Okay, but then it got worse. Right, and now in Saudi, it is getting better, from what I hear. But do you think it could regress, go back worse?
I don't think so. So what happened is back then there wasn't internet, there wasn't any way to learn about others, right? I remember when I first came back to Syria and see women without a hijab, that was for me so strange. One of my friends who used to live in Syria, when he came back to study at the university, I remember he told me it was very shocking to him to have a Christian neighbor, right? So it's things.
That was then. Yeah. Now you're thinking because of how globalized everything is becoming. It's not going to go back the other way, right? I think so too. Generally, I think there's I think generally humanity is moving in the right direction. There are things which are becoming more ingrained in the global conscience. Globally, humanity is altogether having certain things which are ingrained. Concepts of just equality and of anti-racism, right? That's becoming. I mean, these never used to be big themes in the world, right? They are big themes in the world now, right?
But then you get the overcorrection, like what's happening in the States now, and it's pure insanity.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the like having
LGBT and trans sport. It's just
the
became too
sports thing
much.
is very strange, isn't it? Having biological men who, for 2 weeks they all say, okay, I identify as a woman, and then they compete in women's sports,
It's
and
just stupid,
it is very
It's
unfair.
like you wouldn't imagine
Mm,
in a society that advanced like this. You
mm.
wouldn't imagine them being like falling into traps like this,
Stuff like that, yeah.
and like I want there's I think Mr. Amir, I think, or Almir, asking
Yeah.
what's the point of the stream. And he has a point. We need to get to the meat and
Yeah,
potatoes of this chat. So
yeah. We're just
I
we're just we're just talking. I mean, we'll get to more like religious talks into it, but really, I just wanted to talk to Mohammed, right? So I was
same
enjoying
here.
having a talk. I was enjoying having a talk with him last time. So um, this is one of the easiest ways to talk, and anybody who
Cool.
wants to listen along can, of course. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
but yeah, like you said, yeah, it is going extreme the other way. I mean, for a time there was this great series that was put on YouTube a while back. This is going back like 10 years. Unfortunately, the guy who did it suffered a memory loss, and everybody thought he died because he's just disappeared from the internet. But he made this great series called Man, Woman, Myth, Man, Woman, Myth, where he examined the whole thing about. He basically examined the whole thing about how the discrimination against women. Okay, and he was showing that actually now there's a lot of discrimination against men. So you've got misogyny. There's also
Yeah.
misandry, right? And so that's where you get all of the men's rights movements. There was this popular one called Girl Rights What, Karen Storm, I think her name was. She did a lot about that. But yeah, there was a lot of moving in the pendulum, like you said, swinging the other way a bit too much. Um, but who knows where it's going to go. What concerns me about the things in like the most civilized, quote unquote, countries, right? Where and I mean, I don't like the word civilized. I would say the ones which have the most comforts, right? So Canada, America, they have the most comfortable lives.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that that in these places they are forgetting what the real crimes are happening in the world are, right? So there was this thing in the UK, and I think also made its way to Canada. We had this thing about, again, talking about just men's rights and women's rights. There's this thing called mansplaining or manspreading, that they wanted to make it an issue that if a man sits on, like, in the train or something, and he spreads his legs out, that now is offensive, right? So
Spreading is just
manspreading, they called it. Yeah. So there are people that are all up in arms about that, and they'll protest and they'll make signs and go out and talk about these kind of things, right? Whereas in other parts of the world, genocides are happening, and but they're oblivious to that.
you
Um,
listen. We have people still dying in forgetting part of the world, like India or Africa or like
or Yemen.
Brazil or Yemen. Some of them dying because they don't have drinking water, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or dying because of diarrhea. And,
Mm,
and people here are arguing about manspreading and pronouns. And
yeah.
it's just insane, you know.
Yeah. Or now, what's in the media right now? It's the Will Smith, right? Will Smith.
Oh yeah,
Um,
this
that's what everybody's
I
talking
don't know.
about.
I once
And
there was actually a phenomenal book called "The Madness of Crowds."
the madness of crowd.
Yeah, by Douglas Murray, I think his name.
Okay.
He's a British author. He is a
Mm,
gay person,
mm,
but he talks about the trans issues. It's one of like the most insightful books that everyone, I think, should read.
Okay, I'll definitely look at the
Yeah.
madness of crowds. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll definitely look at that because I'm very interested in that as well. How?
Yeah. You have to. So,
Yeah.
in one part, he says, I don't want to misquote him, but he says something like, "We are wired in a way that we fight against injustice, and since the world has came to a place where there's, relatively speaking, there is no more wars, right?" I understand there's the Ukraine war happening, the Yemen war happening, but this is nothing to what the war used to be. The war used to be something that never ends.
Yeah.
It was an everyday thing.
Yeah. There was no strict borders.
Strict, and like it's even before the borders, even like if you think about it, since we were human, in terms that we have villages, uh, like the fact that raids and wars, it never stopped. It's part of the human psyche. So now that we have everything comfortable, and it seems to the author that we are just trying to find anything to fight
Yeah, looking for
for.
something to fight.
Yeah, to fight for.
Okay, I see. That's interesting. On definitely. So that book, The Madness of Crowds, it's more about that kind of idea. I thought just from the title, I thought it would be more about the madness of groupthink. Because that brings us on to like religion. Religion is like the biggest groupthink there is for most of the time, right? That when you
So
talk about religion, it's always about groupthink, right? The majority of
yeah,
people just meld together, and then even within the groupthink, when some splinter happens, now you have groups, and those groups coalesce into groupthink, right? So you've got like in Islam, of course, the Sunni and Shia, and then they get split up even more, and you have all this groupthink mentality. I actually saw
so
this I don't know if it's true story or something, but this meme anywhere, well, was shared around about somebody who some religious scholar or teacher in Qatar or somewhere who got a bunch of like fatwa from Bin Bas, from Ibn Uthaymeen, from Qardawi and Sha'rawi and a few other people, right? And so
yeah,
he gave his students and told them to analyze them and think which fatwa do you think is better. And they all said the fatwa of Ibn Bin Baz and Ibn Uthaymeen are better. And when you asked why, said because they are based on the Quran and Sunnah, right?
yeah,
Then he revealed to them that he'd actually swapped them round. That what they had read, the fatwas which of Ibn Baz were actually Qardawi's, and of Ibn Uthaymeen was actually a Sha'rawi. And that was supposed to be his way of showing them that what you're doing really in the end are following it's a group think, right?
yeah.
You attach yourself to a lead or something, and then you move along with it.
That's actually one of the worst things one can do. When you last time we were talking about being able to put yourself in a neutral position and then analyze things as they come, right?
Yeah.
It is one of the hardest thing to do, but once you're able to do it, I feel like you are in a position where you are, like, it really propels you and puts you on a different plane, because you genuinely became in a human, in a sense. It's like a superpower, because you're doing something not a lot of people can do.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that, of course. And I always think that, of course, that's the Quran is always constantly about that. That's why it always talks about people. The majority of people are being like "Kal an'am, bal hum adall," right? They
So,
just they just go, like now we say sheeple. But actually, for the audience, me and Muhammad, when we were discussing this, because he was asking me, I think you were asking me, but how are you sure, or how can you be sure? How can you
yeah,
re-examine yourself? And I was saying, look, it's because I was pushing. It's true, very true, what he said. You try to put yourself in as a neutral position as possible. But in the end, even when you say I am going to put myself I'm going to put myself in a neutral position. That I and that my and myself, you carry along with you your history. You know
Oh,
what has made you,
100%.
yeah,
100%.
what has made you what you are. It's very difficult to shed, right? And
Yeah.
yes, you can say, okay, I'm trying to put myself in a neutral position, but how can you ever know if you're successful in that? You know, it's a very difficult thing. It's like trying to jump away from your own shadow. Okay, it's very
Yeah.
difficult to do. So what I was saying to Muhammad, the way I looked at things, and I probably haven't shared this on this channel before, but
Yeah.
what I did when one of the things I wanted to do when I was examining the whole idea of faith and belief and why is it that I believe and why is it that people believe, as you know, I was explaining this to Muhammad and also I tried to Aron as well. Is that what I did is I tried to follow the mentality or put myself in the shoes of somebody more like me, which means Muslims, right? Just give me a second. Let's see what's going on. Right. Okay. So I just put I tried to follow the Muslim, the ex-Muslim thinking, sort of. I tried to see, okay, why is it that there's a lot of people who are obviously intelligent. Yeah, I don't dismiss the intelligence of ex-Muslims or people like that, right? Why is it that these people are they can come? Why is it that two people can have the same experiences almost? They can be shown the same information, and one person will continue to believe in the religion, and the other person will not. Right. So I spent a lot of time listening to a lot of ex-Muslim stories, especially from Abdullah Samir's YouTube channel. He did a lot of interviews with ex-Muslims, which I found very good. Also, people like Hassan Radwan, Vidovic, anybody who was thinking for a long time. I must have watched maybe over almost 20 or between 10 and 15 or 20, something like that. Ex-Muslims telling their experience, their journey out of Islam, right? Because I wanted to put myself in that position and see. No, it wasn't as an attempt to try to like refute them or find what they got wrong. No, it wasn't about that. It was trying to see what is it, what does it mean to have faith, to have belief, and what does it mean to lose it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why like one of the thought experiments which I put forward on that is one of the, I think it was Vidovic who was talking about this. Yes, he was saying that that he was talking about when he lost his faith in Islam, and he mentioned it like that game Django. Those blocks. So you've got those blocks which you build up, and then you keep on having to remove one, and you take it in turns to remove a block,
Yeah.
and the one who removes one and falls down, he's the one who's lost basically. You know that game, right?
Yeah, I think I know.
Yeah.
You build it like,
Tumbling blocks.
yeah.
Yeah, it starts off like just a tower of blocks, and you have to take turns removing blocks, right? So he said it was like it was like that one block was removed, and it all came crashing down. So I thought to myself, okay, if that whole if you were to go to video vids now, this person who said this, and you were to I'm talking about like, as a metaphor here, rebuild everything, okay, and show him that one block which was removed to him, he was wrong about that, okay.
Yeah.
If you were to sort of rewind back to that point, would he believe? And my conclusion about that, no, he wouldn't. He wouldn't believe because what when you talk about it come crashing down, what you're really talking about is that finally that the trust has been broken. Okay, that's what it really means. I think when you talk about religious faith. Okay, maybe not belief because again, belief and faith, I don't think they necessarily have to go together. All right. But somebody can there's a difference between it. Faith is more about trust, and what happens, I think, why somebody could stay a Muslim, okay, despite having information which only half of that would make somebody else leave Islam. It has to do with trust. How much are you really? How far are you willing to trust what this is? How much are you willing to say, okay, maybe I don't get this, maybe this seems wrong, but I'm still going to trust it. I'm still going to have faith. Okay, where is your breaking point in that? So that's what I was thinking about that. So
So let me interject here,
go ahead. Yeah.
because I'm also in a position where I'm trying to verify all my beliefs.
Mhm.
So the first thing that comes to my mind is why to have a trust in the first place, right? Or a faith. I'm not talking about trust. So the difference between the two is I bet a lot of people who are hearing this, they would say, yeah, and you have a lot of faith in science, for example, right? Well, the difference is, I don't believe I have faith in science. I believe I have a trust in science. So what's the difference? While I haven't traced all my thoughts or beliefs back to, let's say, to the scientific books, scientific research, I have a trust in the scientists themselves that
Yeah,
they know.
that's what I would say. Yes, exactly. Because sometimes we talk about science as if science is a thing, right? Science has proven this. Science has shown this. It's not science. It's really scientists, isn't it? It's the people.
Well, it's a combination between the people and the methodology.
Oh yeah,
So
of course. But the methodology has to be. Well, not the methodology on its own doesn't work, and the methodology is even the methodology itself. It is a production of people, right? So yes, you could be say I'm trusting the methodology. In the end, it comes down to trusting the people and the intellect. And you can say, okay, I've re-examined what they've done, especially the methodology, and I agree with the methodology. Um, but then in the end, you have to have a certain amount of trust in people, and this is where things it gets tricky, right? Because even in science, you can have manipulation, especially when things like now you're talking about the LGBT and that kind of stuff, and also even before when you were talking about if you talk about smoking like now, right? You're smoking, but like the tobacco science, right? Everybody knows the tobacco science of the when was
yeah.
it the 60s or something? All the scientists then, of course, they knew that breathing, of course, smoke into your lungs is not going to be a good thing, but they put studies, right? Peer reviewed and stuff like this showing no, it's fine. Same thing when it comes to the climate change. Anything where you have a lot of money invested or you have strong political or religious views, the science can be infiltrated, right? The
But
scientists.
my belief is, if you read the research put by those who are trying to deceive you,
Hmm.
uh, and you are equipped with the proper critical tools, I think if you read it, you will be able to figure out that they are lying.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a lot of work, isn't it? I mean, there's so much in science, and it's so detailed now and so advanced, right? Maybe sometimes somebody just doesn't have the capability, right, of
Oh,
going
true.
to that level.
The
Yeah,
the capability part, I totally agree with.
yeah.
But
It's
I
the
would agree that I would argue that it's something, a skill you can develop.
mm, yeah, it's true. It's true, but it takes us back to something like around like a question of time, even when it comes to like religions, right?
Yeah.
Like people will say, let's say one of the religions is true, okay, and now you have to sort of investigate all of them, right?
Oh
Learn
no.
the
Oh
languages
no.
and stuff like this. No, I'm just saying that whether you're talking about religions or you're talking about the science, verifying things for yourself, it's not feasible most of the time for most of us, especially we've got our family, our work, our commitments. How much time can we spend, even if we spend all of our free time dedicated to the pursuit of truth, we'd go
Yeah.
insane almost, right? We need time for like leisure, for relaxing. How
So
do we overcome that?
let's yeah, that's something I even tried to ask Aaron about it last time, but he
Mm,
was in a rush, so I couldn't get to the bottom of the answer. But that's something, there's a thought experiment I want to do. I'm actually quite busy these days because I'm studying, preparing to a career shift. So,
mm,
uh, but when that is done, I want to find someone. Probably, I'm gonna do it on my own too. But
mm.
it would be nice to have someone else do it with me, which is taking something scientific and trying to see if we can validate it. So I'm not talking about uh, like physics or math, because I feel these things they could easily be verified.
Mm.
But I'm talking about, let's say, something a little bit more complicated, like evolution, for example. So I would love to study it and then see like where eventually it breaks down. So I could read all the lectures about, not all of them, but like I could read about the lectures about evolution, but there will be a time where I need to check like embryos and then check, let's say, fossils.
So you're saying the experiment is to investigate something in science up to the point where you need to verify something for yourself. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, to see if I can eliminate the trust issue, right? Because I don't like the word trust, or not trust. I don't like the word faith, and I don't want to have faith in anything. You know?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Why not in because I'll throw you something back at you right now. Why
Yeah.
not also in like physics and like not mathematics, because of course that's different, but in terms of physics, because you do need in the end for physics experimental data, right? Because here's something which I tend towards. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced, but I tend towards it. I tend towards not accepting the Big Bang or the expanding universe, right? So
Yeah.
I tend towards the steady state model, right? And for me, it was the work of Mr. Eric Lerner, okay, which I thought was very, because it was more empirical. It's more based on experimental data. Whereas the Big Bang and expanding universe, okay, yeah, they do have their evidence, but it's mixed with a lot of theory. A lot of maths has to go in there, and you can just have just one thing wrong in your theory or an equation or the assumptions to it.
Collapse.
Things go wrong. Whereas a more empirical thing. So what he did was he studied. It's the simplest test to see if the universe is expanding, which is galaxy luminosity. So what you do is you take the brightness of a galaxy and you divide it by its area, right? And you do that with multiple galaxies, and then that'll be able to tell you. It's called the Tolman test. We'll be able to tell you if the universe is expanding or not, right?
But what about the constant change in position for the stars? Did you read about that? That like if you take a cosmic photo of the universe now, and one after 6 months, for example, and another one after a year, you will find the stars are getting
Yeah, they're
further.
moving. Yeah, there's motion definitely,
Yeah,
but
but
in terms of
if you connect the dots between the stars, the first position, second position, third position, they're gonna create. There will be a line between them, right? And then all the lines will be pointing toward a single line, single point, and that's what they mean by the singularity and the moving, expanding universe.
I'm not sure about that, because what the singularity was, it was basically it was it was it was born out of Einstein's equations, right? So the singularity is a singularity. It was a mathematical thing before it was before it came about to becoming like something like for experimental, right? Later on, yes, Hubble and the redshift and all of that kind of stuff came into it. But I mean, like I said, like, I'm not saying that there's no evidence. I'm just saying I tend towards it. I'm a little bit more in favor
Yeah.
of non-expanding universe and non-Big Bang. Okay, but I'm not denying that because what I do personally, I keep the science and the religious stuff separate. Right. So
Yeah.
you'll find most Muslims will say. Because they would say, there's a verse in the Quran, وَالسَّمَاءَ بَنَيْنَاهَا بِأَيْدٍ وَإِنَّا لَمُوسِعُونَ. They would say this indicates the
They
expanding
will,
universe.
they will to fit it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they would. Yeah, go ahead.
let me share this photo with you. Let me see if I can share it.
Yeah, you should be able to, if you go on the bottom, share. You should be able to
See,
share a tab or share a
yeah,
window.
something like this. So in the private chat, I posted a photo.
Ah. Can you get it into maybe a link, and then I can, if it's in a link, I can show it on the on the screen.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, you got it. Okay. Yes. Link. Okay. Hold on. Let me open that up. It says unable to process image.
Strange. Let me check.
Oh, can you share? Just share. You can share the screen yourself. It's open in another tab, right? So on the bottom,
Yeah.
you see where it has, from the
Okay,
left says mute, start cam settings, and then share. Where it says share, click on that.
Share screen. Share
Yeah, and
screen.
and then try do share tab.
Okay,
You
Chrome
should have
tab.
Chrome tab exactly, and then choose the tab.
Okay, let's see if it works.
Yes, there it is. Okay, let me add it. There we go.
Yeah. So if you notice the position of the top left galaxy, the one that's spiraling, they keep moving, right? But if you draw a line between all the stars, they all separating in a way, and when you trace the line to the back, they all point toward a single point.
Yeah, I know, but this is more like this is more of a schematic to make you understand what the Big Bang is. I mean, there isn't data which is like this. I don't think. Okay, this is more like just a representation. But look, I'll tell you what. Maybe after this, I'll share a link with you to the what he did. It was in the Cosmology conference where Mr. Lerner presented, a sort of like a summary of the evidence that he has anyway against the Big Bang, right? I'll share that with you, and you can have a look at it. It's I mean, I did study sciences, so I'm able to follow that fairly well. It might be difficult to follow, but it's still very interesting. Even just starting to listen to things like this at a higher level, it will bring up your level of understanding slowly to it if you can't follow it. But yeah, no, I'm up for that thought experiment that you want to do. I wouldn't mind being involved in that if I can. But I get it. Yeah.
Because I value myself as someone who value evidence of what got you. So it would be like a hypocritical thing of me when it comes to science not to be able to trace what I believe, right?
Yeah, it's true. Well, okay. Here's a sort of like a follow up from that, right?
Yeah.
So right now, what you're saying right now is you're not sure that you can trace what you believe, right?
If we take the time factor out, like let's say I'm set for life and I have all the time and the world to do whatever I want to do. I feel like I'm gonna hit.
You're sort of cutting off a little bit. Sorry.
Walls, like as you. That's all right. Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, I can hear you now better. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I said if I take the time factor out, if I had time to do anything I want in my life, and I was trying to verify some scientific stuff, I feel like I'm gonna hit some walls. I'm either gonna reach a level where I need to run some experiments, like I don't have the lab or the equipment to do, or I'm gonna, let's say I see a photo of a fossil. It's still a photo, like I don't have an access to the fossil itself, right? So it will come back to the point of a trust, which is
what you want to try and avoid.
Yes, right.
Yeah. No, I get you, but so I'm just saying. So up to the point, let's say you're in the process of verifying something, okay?
Yeah.
So up to the point, let's say eventually you do get to verify it, okay?
Yeah.
So up to the point that you do verify it, before that point, what would you call your relationship with that then? Would you call that faith or trust? What would you call it up to that point? Or would you say that you're agnostic to it, but or let's say slightly agnostic to
I would say I believe in it. I think that's the fair word to say it.
Yeah.
Because faith to my understanding, means blind, like a belief without evidence, right?
What's belief then? What would you say belief is?
Belief is belief with evidence,
So you
based
believe.
on evidence.
Well, here it would be believe with the evidence sort of provided by others, right? Because
Yeah,
we're saying, okay, it's
yeah,
before you got to the to your own ability to verify it, right? So it would be belief. I see. I would put it almost the other way around. For me, the way I would use the words, I don't know. Maybe that's because of our, you know, semantic background differences. I don't know, but I would put it the other way around, right? I would say that I would call what you would say belief. I would call that trust. I would call that faith, because it's basically having trust or faith in others that they have gotten it right. Okay. So yes, there is some trust, and there is, and it doesn't have to be blind. It doesn't have to be blind. You can tell if somebody is a scholar of something, or if somebody is knowledgeable, and you can follow some of the arguments, and they can prevent you some of the reasons. So they give you enough that you trust them. Nobody
yeah.
trusts blindly. Okay, I don't think there's such a thing as as sort of like completely blind trust. Okay, you can have trust which ignores things, like somebody can trust somebody who they shouldn't trust. All right, but it's a choice, right? Whereas I would say belief, when you believe or don't believe something, that's something just involuntary. You can't make yourself believe something when you think it's not true. All
I
right.
agree. I agree
Yeah,
with you. Yeah,
so I would say that's what I would say. So that's a for example what I would say. Like I've spoken on this channel before about the one thing which I thought is a scientific error in the Quran, which is the backbone and the rib thing. Okay,
yeah,
I would say about that. I would say that I don't believe it was true at the time. Okay, because now I think I understand what it's talking about. It's just a euphemism, but at the time I would say, okay, this is I believe that this is not true, but I will have faith and I will trust that it is, but I don't know how yet. Right at that time, that's what I would say. Right. So that's probably coming down more to the roots of, maybe a difference where you and me would stand on that, right? So um, how would I talk about that in terms of the Quran? For example, so the Quran, does that mean that it would seem like it would open up a way that no matter what is in the Quran, I would just say I still have trust. I believe that doesn't look like it's true. I can't believe that it's true, but I'm still going to have trust. Now, I don't think that's true, because trust is earned, right? Somebody can earn your trust, all right? So
yeah,
you can, for example, let's say a husband knows his wife, knows how faithful she is. She has really earned his trust, okay? And then one time he sees her coming out from some man's house, okay, in the middle of the night. He's just driving, unexpectedly he sees some. Okay, now he has a reason. Okay, there's something which is shown, which like a sort of like evidence thing, which is contrary to his trust. But he can still trust her. He can say, okay, no, she's earned my trust. There's an explanation in there. There's an explanation for that. I don't know what it is yet. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm gonna have that kind of trust. Okay, so you can have a trust which is earned. So I wouldn't say that that's the thing which I had with the Quran when it came to that scientific error, which I saw as a scientific error, because with enough things, trust is broken. Okay, with enough things where you see which is wrong, eventually that trust will be broken, and that's basically what I sort of like found when I was contemplating the whole, ex-Muslims and listening to how they speak, right? They would have a certain amount of trust, okay, and the moment of losing faith, okay, the moment of not becoming Muslim and say that's it, I don't believe anymore, okay, that was really the moment where the trust is broken, okay, they can't accept it anymore. And when the trust is broken, then everything before that becomes negative, right? You see what I mean? So a person
yeah,
who so a person who, for example, had like you said, like the example of maybe infidelity, right? So a husband sees his wife. Okay, he sees one time something, and he says, "No, I trust that there's an explanation for that." All right, and
yeah,
maybe if it stops there will be. Okay, but then let's say it happens again and again and again. All right, now let's say it happens the sixth time. At the sixth time, his trust is broken. Now that lack of trust, he can look back at everything before, and it will no longer have an explanation. All of that is infidelity. The first time, the second time, all of that is still for him infidelity, right? Because that trust was broken. So a break in trust can change your perspective on what's happened behind, on your past. So that's what I see in the sort of the breaking in faith in a lot of the ex-Muslim stories. I'm talking mostly about the ones which are very, you can feel that they're very heartfelt. You know, the people who really they felt real betrayal with Islam. You've heard that, yeah? They get very
the
angry.
feeling. Yes,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah, they get very angry and very and it is a betrayal, right? Because now you think, oh my God, and they say this, right? Everything I thought was true is a lie. Okay, so now everything which is in their past, which they had, you know, they had faith it was true, even though they may not have looked right. Okay, now it's just like, no, all of that has flipped now, and it's all a lie, right? So that's how I see. I mean, I don't like. That's why when it comes to the words belief and faith, I'm trying in myself to change the way I use them. I try not to use the word believers anymore, because I don't think that's the right term. I think having faith, the faithful, is a better term for the religious experience of following a religion. You have faith, okay, and then, you know, some things might poke holes into that faith, and if enough holes are poked, then that faith will disappear, and then what happens is, yeah, it will shatter, and then you will have a completely very negative view of everything before, which you had as a positive view.
Well, in a perfect world, like you know, one should just verify the claims, and then when, as you said, when there is enough evidence that something is wrong, they should leave it or stop believing in it. I understand the angry part, you know, and I think it's a phase everyone who leaves their religion, especially if they had like an investment in terms of time or effort or whatever it is, they're gonna feel really betrayed, as you said.
You know, I mentioned that to Aaron when I spoke with him one on one, and he said because I said something which maybe it was a sweeping statement, but I said yes. When I mentioned this loss of faith, this loss of trust, I said that's why when people you know, come to the conclusion that their religion is a lie, okay, then that's why they can have it can be really soul crushing. And he sort of said, soul crushing? No, it's not soul crushing. It's liberating. And he said, you know, for him, because for him that's how it was. He said, for me, he said that for him he was embarrassed of himself more than anything. It wasn't that he was angry or anything.
For me, to be honest, it was liberating because.
What was it more? That's what because of what I mean. What was it more? Is it more liberating or more a lot of angry phase in the beginning at least? I'm talking initial stage. Is it more liberating or more sort of like I don't know, depression?
Well, you know, it didn't happen in a day, but like for me, because like everyone's story is different, but like for me, like I had struggled with anxiety from a younger age, right? And like perfectionism was always a problem for me. And like I always, like, at least from my understanding, I always was sinning. And you know, like I felt like I was commanded to do stuff that I can't do, basically. And when eventually it came crumbling down, when I was like, oh shit, this is not true, I was like, I don't have to worry about this anymore. I don't have to live in contradiction and keep thinking. So today I was thinking, because I know I was coming to this chat to talk, for example, why I left my like why I lost faith, right? Like one of the examples that I was thinking about, and I bet like a lot of the viewers will look at this and they were gonna shake their heads at this example and think it's really silly.
Go on.
You know, yeah. No, I'm not worried, but like I was thinking about it again today, and
Mm.
to be honest, like both of views, I think are valid. But I remember there was a hadith that says something along the lines of like if God gave everyone what the equivalent of wealth to 10 times what this earth is, his fortune wouldn't diminish, but like when you dip the nail inside the sea,
Yeah.
right? And like for me, this was always a contradiction, because God's wealth is infinite, and when you dip something inside the sea, it takes a part of it, even though it's infinitesimal. But if you has infinite number of needles and you dip them inside the sea, it's gonna
take away the sea. Yeah.
you're gonna take the entire sea, right? So there is something I learned when I was thinking about this today. I learned something about infinity. Is if you have infinite resources, in the case of the sea, because there's always water coming from the rain and dripping inside it, right? So it is infinite. But yeah, still, if you have infinite number of needles and you still dipping them inside the sea, it's gonna diminish it, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, when I was thinking about this, I swear it used to give me headaches. Like I would, after I think about this for like an hour, I would get a headache out of this, right? I remember when I to the Friday prayer and hear different stuff that seemed to me that it's contradiction. I would get out of the prayer and have headaches, literal headaches after that, because it just doesn't make any sense, right? And that's why. So, like in my view, if you take the Sunnah, if you take the Hadith and look inside it, you're gonna find trying to find that term that is not offensive.
No, it's fine. Don't worry about saying offensive.
Yeah.
We'll know what you mean.
I know, but like I don't want to be offending to the people who are listening, but like you would find the stuff that insanely.
Yeah, you don't need to worry about offending this crowd. Remember, this is like a lot of the people who come on to see this channel are Quranic Muslims,
Yeah.
and they themselves will say the most offensive things about hadith. So,
Yeah, well, like I would think it's extremely stupid. You know what I mean? Like, and like I learned over the years, a lot of Muslim scholars they find a way to say that this hadith is not authentic, and like, but if it's the case, so why you're taking like if you're looking at Sahih Bukhari and saying some stuff in it is rejected, you know, then why you're taking the other half, right? And why the stuff that you reject are always the stuff that are embarrassing? You know, I feel like if you use the same logic, you will end up with maybe a handful of hadith because you everything.
yeah.
You know, and like it's not my place to judge people or their beliefs, but for me, the way I used to believe is Islam is true, you know, and God is true, and Prophet is truth, and everything they say is correct. And even if I don't understand it, it has to be true, right? So once you find all these contradictions, at some point, I think the example you gave for the affair is a very good example, because at some point you just you no longer have that faith, right? It just breaks down. So I remember one of the other things that like it cracked me down, but like that was at the later stages when I was becoming agnostic. But when I learned about the black stone, that it's a meteoroid,
Yeah.
I was like, holy smokes.
Was it a meteorite though?
I think it is. I think there
Yeah, they
was
say,
a
yeah, some hadiths or
archaeologist.
something. They say that. Oh, an archaeologist got his hands on the black stone. How did he do that?
Yeah. Let's actually try to fact check this.
Yeah,
Allah,
if you find out, I would like to know about that.
because I remember I read about it in the Wikipedia, which is not necessarily the best source to.
No, no,
So let's try to look at meat.
no.
Meat.
See if you can see anything about that.
Uh,
Yeah, there was something you said, and I wanted to interject about it, but it slipped my mind now. What were you saying before? I forget what it was, to be honest. I think, oh no, it was regarding the whole hadith
yeah.
issues. Of course, like I said, this channel, it's my username is Quranic Islam,
Yeah.
for a reason that I firmly believe that the hadith corpus. Of course, it's like what were you saying, for example, about Bukhari? Why take, if you're going to take some things in Bukhari, why not take everything? Well, don't forget, Bukhari is not, it's not his book, right? It's he's collecting what was there before. Okay.
Yeah.
So he's deciding what to collect. Not everything in Bukhari is of the same strength, right? And also, in the end, Quranists and stuff, they don't like, to have any praise for these hadith scholars. But, and they do have a lot of problems, but they did what they could, right? Okay, we can say, in a way, they did what they could, but the problem is they grew up in their own environments. They are the result of their own teachers, the result of their own inclinations, their own racism, their own sectarianism. All of that goes into the issue on what makes Bukhari. Bukhari, for example, he comes from the Bukhara region, right? His grandparents were Mawala Banu Umayyah. They were from the Banu Umayyah, right? They were released in that kind of way, and you
Yeah.
can see that in how he chooses what he puts in and what he doesn't put in. Okay, so example, let me give you a very easy example to see this, right?
Yeah.
And this also comes back to Imam Malik himself, right? So one of the hadiths, very famous, everybody knows this, okay? Everybody knows this version in the Sunni world. They say that, the Prophet said that, I've left you two things. If you hold on to them, you will never go astray. Kitab
Yeah.
Allah wa Sunnati, right?
Or somebody, yeah.
Yeah. Now that hadith, it's not in Bukhari, okay? It's not in Muslim. It's not in any of the 6 collections of hadith, okay? And the reason why it's not there is because none of them could find a sahih chain to put it, right? They had enough integrity to say, okay, we can't find. The first time that hadith comes out is in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, and he narrates it without a chain. And of course, I don't know if you know about the history. It will be very good for you to maybe, I don't know if you have the inclination or not, but to read about the history post Muhammad and all the way up to the development and writing down of hadiths. You will see why it is such a mixture of things. Imam Malik, for example, he would never, he was constantly watched by the authorities because he was such a star. He was such a star in terms of his, he was a very high caliber. So he was being watched. And so that's why he put in that narration. Follow my book, the Book of Allah, and my Sunnah. He put it in to be a balance, okay, to work it. He put it for the authorities to be against the true hadith, which is, if it's found in Sahih Muslim, it's found in Tirmidhi, in Ahmad, which is the Prophet said, and it's a mutawatir hadith, right? It has many chains. They say it's mutawatir. I don't believe in mutawatir, but it does have many chains and it is strong hadith. That the Prophet said, I'll give you 2 things. If you hold on to them, you'll never go astray. Kitab Allah wa itrati ahl bayti, right? The Book of Allah.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
Is
So
it not the Shia? I think they believe in that version.
No, but this version is in Sahih Muslim. It's in Tirmidhi. It's in Ahmad ibn Hanbal's collection. It's in Nasa'i. It's in tens and tens of Sunni books. It's actually mutawatir in Sunni books, but you will never hear it from the pulpits in Saudi Arabia or from the pulpits anywhere really. All you hear constantly is Kitab Allah wa Sunnati, which is a hadith which has no chain of narration. Okay, Imam Malik was the first one to do it. And think of this, Imam Malik was in Medina 2 generations only from the Sahaba, and he could not find a hadith, okay, I could not find a chain of narration for this hadith. Now, Imam Muslim and Bukhari, they were contemporaries. They were actually friends. They were friends and student and teacher. Imam Muslim, he puts that hadith in his collection. Kitab Allah wa itrati ahl bayti. But Imam Bukhari wouldn't. Okay? Not because he knew, because he thought the hadith wasn't sahih, and not because it's not just listen to the hadith. It says, I leave you two things which if you hold on to, you will never go astray. That's got to be the most important hadith, okay, with the Prophet saying at the end of his life this, right? Yeah. What two things which if you hold on to, you'll never go astray? But Imam Bukhari, he doesn't put that in hadith, okay? And many other ways you can see this sectarian influence in how the different scholars chose which hadiths to put in, which hadiths not to put in. Okay, and so you have a creation in the end. Bukhari is really the most important collection in Sunni Islam, not because it is the most authentic, but because it matches the dogma of Sunni Islam the most. Okay, it matches the dogma of Sunni Islam very closely. Okay, more so even than Sahih Muslim, because Sahih Muslim he put in this hadith, he put in other things which are more in line with the Shia. Okay, and so because of that, his Sahih is not as venerated in Sunni Islam as Imam Bukhari. Imam Bukhari didn't put in Kitab Allah wa Itrati. He didn't put the Man kuntu mawlahu fa aliyun mawla. Right? He didn't put a bunch of other things which give more weight to the Sunni side, to the Shia side of history. Okay, so this is just what I'm saying. Just when it comes to hadith studies, okay. And also, by the way, one key person, if you want to investigate these sort of things, one key person you want to look into is Shu'bah. Okay, he was the first person to actually start checking if people actually heard from the people who said they heard from. So this was about 150 after the Prophet's time. Okay, so somebody would narrate a hadith saying, I heard so and so who said that so and so said this, who said so and so said this, and he would say, okay, hold on a minute. Did you yourself actually hear this? Did you actually hear it yourself? And he would say, actually, no. So-and-so told me that he heard so. So then he would go and find so-and-so. And he would tell him, he said to me that you said that you heard from so-and-so, from this Sahaba, that the Prophet said this. So let me ask you, did you actually hear it yourself with your own ears? And the person would say, actually, no, I didn't hear it myself. I heard it from somebody else told me that so-and-so said it. So he would do this. And often he would find that in between, when somebody says, I heard somebody said something, in between those two, there's actually three other people. Okay, so it's just rumors. It was just at the time, early Islam, before Shu'bah, because he was the first person to start checking that people were actually narrating from whom they said they were. Before then, it's like now, how people talk now. Somebody said this, somebody said that. You hear things.
Chinese whispers.
Like
Chinese whispers.
Like that, but not exactly. It's more like, it's just like how we talk normally, right? Like somebody tells you something that Obama said, okay? And then you will go to somebody else and say, Obama said this thing, all right? You're not going to say, so-and-so told me that Obama said this. You just say it, right? And that's how it was. That's how the early narrations were. And in the Quran, it mentions that, when it talks about the hypocrites who were there, فِيكُمْ سَمَّاعُونَ لَهُم. So what the hadith scholars did is they made it that anybody who either saw the Prophet once only, okay, and died outwardly as a Muslim, he is a Sahabi and you can't touch him. That's in Sunni Islam, right? He's a Sahabi above reproach. And as long as you can get the hadith back to a Sahabi, then that's it. They have no idea of even judging Sahaba to be authentic or to be trustworthy or not, okay? But they can't all be trustworthy. There were the people who tried to assassinate Muhammad at the end of his life on the way back from Tabuk, they still lived after the Prophet, because the Prophet didn't execute them or anything like that, right? So there were people who were alive, who were hypocrites right after. When we're going to be reading Surah At-Tawbah in the live stream, right? And Surah At-Tawbah, it talks so much heavily about the munafiqeen, right? And it's one of the last surahs revealed. There were many, okay? And so the Prophet died. One of the things I think which has done a lot of disservice by Muslims generally is they portray that the Prophet at the end of his life, he was like a king, right? Everybody was obedient to him. Everybody listened to him. Well, it isn't the case. At the end of his life, he was being ignored. He was being completely ignored. For 2 weeks, he was trying to get the army of Usama, for example, to go off, and nobody was listening to him. Okay, when he said that last sermon of Ghadir Khum, which is the Shia do have it right. I'm from a Sunni background, and it took me. I'm ashamed of myself now because it took me so long to admit this. but historically it is definitely the Shia do have it right that the Prophet nominated Ali to be his caliph. Okay, but after that, of course, it was ignored. Okay, it was ignored, right? You had Umar, for example, when the Prophet wanted to have that written down, saying, he is raving, yahjur. So you had a lot of things. The Prophet died in a state where he was being ignored. Basically, he wasn't this, just with one point of his finger, everybody does what he wants. All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is we've diverted into another thing. But history, I really believe this one thing. History, critical view of history, can teach you a lot about why we are in the state we are, the Muslim world. Why are we in the state we are, right? Yeah, it's the same. We are in exactly the same way as the Jews and Christians were, right? We Muslims, we speak of the Jews and Christians and we say they don't follow their scriptures, right? It's the deen is corrupted by their scholars. Also, our deen is corrupted by our scholars.
Right? Oh, heavily. So I want to ask you about something. The 99 names of God. Does it have any origin in the religion?
Again, it's from a narration by Abu Huraira, where he listed them all. But no, it doesn't have those. A lot of those names are only 74 of those names are actually mentioned in the Quran.
Mentioned,
The rest are not. The rest are not. Then they're not mentioned in that kind of. That doesn't mean that they're bad or anything, but it just means that you should understand the difference, right? And that comes again to this idea, like I said, this channel Quranic Lessons, it's about putting the Quran above the narrations and hadiths, and that's why when it comes to what you were mentioning, why accept this and reject this, only accept the things only reject the things which are embarrassing. It's not about rejecting things which are embarrassing, for me at least. It's about rejecting the things which seem contrary to the Quran, because it's our earliest text. You actually didn't you mention that for our time you were trying to follow, you were looking at the work of
Mohammad.
Yes.
Yeah, that was like the last resort to try to save myself. Right?
Yeah. Actually, I've heard a lot of people say that, to be honest, about the Quranism in general, and Muhammad Shahrur in particular. That it's like the final stop before they leave Islam, the final straw to try to like you said, save themselves. But the thing about Muhammad Shahrur, me and myself, I find it very difficult to follow him. I find his thoughts are very muddled, to be honest.
So, I don't think he's consistent, to be honest.
I mean, maybe I don't understand because I don't really study his work too deeply, but from the things which I've seen, he has some great insights, definitely. Okay, but there's a lot of things which are very muddled. And there's somebody else actually. What worries me about Muhammad Shahrur, a little bit, but more so with there's another YouTuber. His YouTube channel is called Marvelous Quran, and he has some incredibly outlandish theories, shall we say. He says, Ismail is the Prophet Muhammad, and there's a lot of weird things. But anyway, what worries me about things like this is that people will now, like you're saying, okay, people who haven't been able to understand the Quran, and mostly it's because I believe personally that it's because they've allowed scholars all the time to influence them. So the scholars tell them this is what the Quran says. It doesn't make sense to them, so they keep on looking for another scholar, somebody else show me, somebody else, and then they go down the list until they come to Muhammad Shahrur, and then if he can't help, maybe they go to Marvelous Quran, and then eventually they'll say, nobody knows what is going on. That's it, I give up, right? But I personally think that people are not giving themselves enough credit that this Quran is meant to be for the individual. Right, it's for you to ponder, it's much better for you to wipe away from yourself, from your mind, what everybody else says about the Quran, and just approach it by yourself. And that's why I was like, Aron has got a very, very bad view of the Quran so far, right? But that's why I said to him once, look, there are people. It's not just because I'm a Muslim that I'm thinking of these. Well, I don't know that, to be honest. Like I said, I can't jump away from my own shadow. But you find people all around the world, non-Muslims, Canadian-born white people, brown people, black people, Japanese people all over the world who do read the Quran for the first time, and they do find something in it which they find as divine. So it's not that simple. I mean, the Quran is an easy book, but at the same time, I think it can be difficult as well.
Like my problem is, honestly, once the genie is outside the bottle, the genie is outside the bottle. So
Then
when I was a Muslim, I had a reason to give a credibility to the book and start with faith, right? But like when you are outside it,
you don't have a reason.
you don't have a reason, and when you try to rationalize it, like look what we've been talking about for the last let's say 15 minutes. So the majority of Muslims, they got it wrong, right? And the hadith is wrong. I'm not saying your view is wrong, but I'm saying assuming your view is correct, that means majority of Sunni people are wrong, right? And even the Shia people are wrong, and that by no fault of their own. It's what happened is the religion wasn't preserved proper, and this makes me think, okay, what kind of God that you want to send a message? Okay, before that, even he created the whole world for us humans, the whole universe for us humans, which is, to begin with, is just a statement that doesn't make any sense, because the universe is just so massive, and for us to occupy something so small out of it, and the whole thing is created for us, and then you find the best way for him to convey this message, which should be the most important message, right, is to send it through prophet, and then his words will be like not to preserved, and the Quran, when you look at it, if you don't have a tafsir and read it, you can come to so many different interpretations. And if you have tafsir and read it, it's just, I'm sorry again, if you open tafsir ibn Kathir, or it's so outlandish. If you take it the face value, it's just so strong, right? Like just the fact that, like we were talking about this the last session we had, the prophet called people, which is according to the interpretation, there's 3 different stories, but I'm gonna take the worst one, which is a group of people. They came to the Sahaba, and they were sick, and the Sahaba healed them, and then they killed them.
Heal them with camel urine, don't forget.
Oh yeah, the camel urine, the most important thing. You know that the irony in that is, if we say this in a religious place, we would have our head cut off. But back to the point. They hid them. They came. So after they get healed, they stole their assets, and then the prophet catches them, and he chops their hands and open their feet and gauge their eyes.
Samra ayunam, exactly. Also the eyes.
And gauge their eyes with
hot needles and stuff.
Like, my God, I understand. Listen, like, I had a conversation with my brother, who's a devout religious person, and he said, like, sometimes you have to make an example. And I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, when there's a excellent book called the Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. I don't know if you heard about this book, but it's
the name.
Yeah, it's basically about a kid in Africa who learned how to generate electricity, like back there, like no one knows anything about science, but he read from the library and he made a generator. It's a very nice story, right? And inside the story, they have to happen a famine inside the village, and when they catch people, because like it reached a level where you are, when you're in a famine, you're literally like dying, right? And if someone steal your food portion, which is maybe a bite every couple of days, it's literally a death sentence. So when they catch, there's a story in the book, they catch a thief stealing the corpse. The farmer tells him, it's a little bit graphic, but he heats like a sword in the fire and goes to the guy and tell him, do you want short sleeves or long sleeves, right? He wants to cut his hands, right? And like, even though it's cruel, I may understand it because it is literally a life or death situation.
Life or
But,
death.
yeah, but like to do something like this, it just like the thing mentioned in the tafsir. So back to the point, like when I read these stories, it just, I can't help myself but wonder, could it really be a God that's so massive and so omnipotent and omnipresent and can do everything? This is his best way to convey his message, right? Is to tell a guy, a random guy in the desert, an illiterate man, right? And tell him the story. And these Arab people were pagan and they were not educated, and they, let's say, tried their best to preserve the Quran and the hadith. And this is what we get. Like, is this the best plan that God could ever make? Because like,
I get
again,
you.
I don't want to be offensive, but like, it's
No,
it's
be
very
as
clear to me. Very
as
clear
clear
to
as you
me.
can.
Yeah, it's very clear to me and anyone who's looking at it, at the story from a secular point of view, that there's something wrong with the story. It's either God is not omnipotent, or there's no God, or the story is wrong, or like there must be something, but it can't be correct. It is.
Well, let me ask you, just to push back on that. What do you
Yeah,
think?
sure.
Do you think there's an answer to that in the Quran, to that objection? That
Answer to which question exactly?
well, just I suppose to the general premise, but first of all, the premise of why is the religion corrupted, right? Why does the religion get handed down corrupted to majority of people? That's one. And also, is this like the best way? Like you said, is this the best way to convey the religion? Do you think there's answers for that or reasons for that or anything?
Well, like I'm trying on top of my head to remember if there's something. I honestly can't think of a good reason. Like I know in the Quran it mentions the previous prophets and how their messages got corrupted. Probably the answer lies there, but I'm not
So what
sure.
about? I mean, so what about the? I mean, if you know these verses, right? The verses which say that if God had willed, He would have made everybody لَجَمَعَهُمْ عَلَى الْهُدَى, right? And if God, sorry, let me say in English as well. If God had wanted, He would have, gathered all of humanity on guidance. Or if God
Okay.
had wanted, He would have sent a single ayah, just one ayah, which would have made all of humanity. فَظَلَّتْ أَعْنَاقُهُمْ لَهَا خَاضِعِينَ لو شئنا لنزلنا من السماء آية فظلت أعناقهم لها خاضعين. We would have sent one sign that would have made all of humanity their necks bowed down in humility for all eternity. Okay, and the many verses like this which talk about how yes, God, this isn't the goal in having, like you said, sending the Quran down to an Arab man in 7th century, or for example, previous prophets, or this method of God sending messages, and this method we said, it's a very poor method to get everybody to become believers. It is true, it's a very poor method, but the theme in the Quran is definitely not. So it's more like I would say about what you said, it's more like a straw man argument. It's like God wants everybody to become a believer. I'm doing this to make everybody believe and to become Muslim or to become whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's not what it's happening. That's not what it's about. Right? God is saying, no, if I wanted to do that, easy, okay? I would do it, right? I would have made everybody with one religion, with one thing, everybody together. That's not the purpose, especially not the purpose for a human being, right? I mean, to have everybody to believe, what's the point? I mean, God has angels, right? We're a very different creature to the angels. The angels are all, believers, close to God. Nobody does anything bad. All of these kind of stuff, right? The human being is something different, right? So that's what I would say that because it happens, like even this idea, right, that the Quran is perfect. The Quran is not perfect, right? It's not meant. I mean, I said this in one of the streams, and in the first two streams that we did together, I was actually trying to engage with the comments there, just because I wanted to give back to anybody listening. But I'm not going to be continuing doing that because there's too many people, And often you will find that the bigger the YouTube channel gets, that the less intelligent comments there are, right? Most people aren't, making intelligent comments, to be honest. But I said this, the Quran is not perfect. It's not trying to be perfect. In fact, there are many verses in the Quran which talk about how it is designed in such a way, basically, that it will actually increase the disease in the heart of those in whose there's a disease. وَمَا يَزِيدُ الظَّالِمِينَ إِلَّا خَسَارًا, and it will only increase the oppressors in their oppression. And you will find that. Example, like, there's another excellent YouTube channel. It's called Blog in Theology. I mean, I like it, but the guy leading it he's a very nice guy. I don't want to put him down, so I'm not going to say what I was about to say, because I do like him a lot. But he had one, what's his name? Jonathan Brown. Jonathan Brown from Berkeley. He's in the Yaqeen Institute as well. Anyway, he's an American revert and scholar of Islam. And he had him on to talk about hadith because he had written a lot of books about hadith, and he spoke a lot about that. So one of the things he said right near the start, he said that if it wasn't for hadiths, people would be able to chop off their hands for stealing a pen or a pencil, right? And I put a comment there. I said, look, if you, Jonathan Brown, didn't have hadiths, you would probably you would chop off somebody's hands for stealing a pencil. That's what you're saying. Okay, of course he wouldn't. I mean, I don't believe he would. But this idea that, even like if you look at have you ever read the UN Charter on Human Rights or any of the these kind of documents?
No.
They're very general. Okay, read them. I mean, it's very interesting. They don't define words, right? They don't it's not made by lawyers. Okay, these kind of charter things are not made that kind of way. They're made in a way to give general outlines and stuff, right? So it's not, and the Quran is a similar sort of thing, I think. So when it talks about, chopping off the hands for a thief, okay, yes, this will be وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. It will be a mercy and a healing for those who have faith, al-mu'minin. But for those who are oppressors, yes, it will increase them in their oppression. And I firmly believe that. So the Quran is not perfect in that kind of way. So God didn't reveal it to be a perfect book. Even when people talk about it's at the top of eloquence and nothing could be more eloquent, no, God did not reveal the Quran to be the most eloquent thing ever. It was not meant to be, right? It's actually made very simple, right? وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. The word choices, the vocabulary in the Quran is very, very little, right? So when it comes to that, like for example, first of all, I mean, when it comes to that story that you mentioned of the Prophet, piercing those eyes and stuff. What if I told you? I mean, I wish I had saved this research somewhere. What if I told you that the ones who are narrating that, because if you follow the chain, were actually in the court of us or in the court of a caliph who actually did that same thing. Right. So, and you find this all over. You find this all over. That's because have you heard of a Zuhri? Do you know who a Zuhri is?
The name sounds familiar.
Yeah, he's basically when it comes to hadith, he's the first person who started to have them written down. Okay, and he was in the court of Hisham bin Abd al-Malik. right? And basically half the hadiths which are sahih, they come through az-Zuhri. Okay, so you have basically a court scholar in the court of like these tyrants. I mean, Hisham was a really vicious tyrant. Okay,
Yeah.
and so you had he's one also. Zuhri was one who started telling people they could do Hajj to the Bayt al-Maqdis because Abdul Malik told him to do that. Okay, because at the time Az-Zubayr was in control of Mecca, and so he didn't want people going to Hajj with a rival caliph, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, the point what I'm trying to say is that you find we have to remember one thing about these hadiths, because the way we read them is we read them as if the Prophet did this, right? We are reading, but really hadiths are backwards through history, if you know what I mean. So when you read a hadith, you're actually reading it backwards through history. You're reading what the last person in the chain, the one closest to you, is saying. Okay,
Sure.
You're not reading what is happening at the start. All right, you're reading about what the person right at the end is saying. Okay, so and you're trying to go backwards through history through that. Okay, and things are added and taken away, and sometimes things are just made up. Okay, made up to justify some of the actions of some of the worst tyrants, and this is an example of that. But I admit one thing, like that verse in the Quran, which is that tafsir, the hadith is related to that verse, which is إنما جزاء الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله ويسعون في الأرض فسادا أن يصلبوا أو أن يقتلوا أو يصلبوا, right? That they should be killed or crucified, or their hands and feet cut from opposite sides, or they should be exiled from the earth, right?
Yeah.
That in itself, yes. When you look at it like just open like that, I see it in the same way which I would see, for example, the verse about chopping up the hand. Yes, you will find some people who are tyrants who, if you steal food, they will use that as an excuse to chop off your hand. Okay, and that way it's increasing the zalimina, the oppressors in their oppression. But this verse, even that verse about hiraba, I look at it basically, if I were to take a set of laws that we have now and apply and put it underneath that verse, it would be war crimes and crimes against humanity. So الذين يحاربون الله ورسوله, you're talking about harb and war, right? So I would say all the crimes which are considered now war crimes, they would fall under that. And the crimes
Well, but it's not a war crime though, right? Like
no, I'm saying that what you would consider now to be a war crime, I would put it underneath that. So, for example, like atomic bomb on a civilian population, I would consider that's a war crime, right? That would be a huge war crime. Okay, so I would say that would go under what that verse is saying. So I would have no problem with somebody literally being, let's say somebody now dropped an atomic bomb on a civilian city. I would have no problem with such a person being crucified, and I think maybe you can even find a worse punishment, a worse way to kill them, maybe radiation poisoning or something.
I agree, but like this is, to be honest, kind of like you're trying to make sense of the verse, because it's not saying that
it's not saying war crimes. You're right. It's saying but it is saying it's using the word harb, yuharibun Allah wa Rasulullah. Of course, nobody can fight against Allah, right? Nobody can do war against Allah. So what does it mean, Allah wa Rasulullah? It just basically means the state, right? Just like now when people say we went to war against Saddam Hussein. You didn't go to war against Saddam Hussein. You went to war against Iraq, or war against Assad, or war against Putin, or war against, you're talking about the leaders to represent a country. At the time, there were no countries, right? So it comes down to that. And crimes against humanity or crimes against the earth, that's, to me, that'll be like those kind of crimes would fall under يَسْعُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا. But again, I'm not saying that these are equivalents. I'm just saying that when you look at a verse like this, which shows such terrible, really harsh, big punishments, then you have to equate it with the worst kind of crimes, right?
But this is like, the thing that can be frustrating for people who are outside this. Is when you read it as is, it doesn't convey anything similar to what you're saying, right? Because it is saying clearly those who are fighting the God and the Prophet, right? So if I'm outside the religion and I look at it, okay, it's saying those who are fighting the God and the Prophet. I don't believe in God. I think it's a fictional thing. And the Prophet, well, it seems to me that the Prophet was putting that verse, like he's not a prophet either, in my opinion. So for me, when I look at this, I'm saying,
So
okay,
let's say Muhammad, right? So let's say
yeah,
those who fight against Muhammad and يسعون في الأرض فسادا, right? So it's not يفسدون في الأرض, which is another term in the Quran. It's يسعون في الأرض فسادا, which is
well,
more emphatic.
that's like when, like, I'll give you an example. The Syrian regime, in the war that happened, well, they used to say those who are against, like, this is the narrative, the formal narrative from the regime, that it says those who are fighting against the regime are, they wouldn't call them rebellions, they would call them مخربين, you know, مجموعة من المخربين, a bunch of people who want to destroy and
Causing
savages,
destruction.
causing destruction, right? So they could call them any name they wanted, right? So if I was a tyrant and I make a rule like, okay, those who are gonna fight me and my God, this is what's their punishment. It seems to me it was either justification or it was a way to terrify people. You know, that's how I look at it. Because I understand, like, your view is kind of, you're trying to find the rationale behind it. But if you look at it as what I call face value, it's not face value, in my opinion. This is what it's saying.
So okay, let's go with the face or what it's saying. So let's remove. Let's say you're not fighting against God. Let's say if we just put it as the meaning means, truly the reward of those who wage war against Muhammad and strive in the earth for corruption.
So wage war also I would disagree about it because it says fighting against them. That's why
it says يحاربون, right? حرب.
But like if Muhammad came to my village, right, and I did what any rational person would do is go out and defend my village, am I harboring the Rasul?
No, that would be Allah and His Messenger يحاربونك, right? That would be them warring against you.
But like there's two sides for the war. So there's people who are fighting and both of them are yuharibun. So there's a harb between, let's say, believers and unbelievers. Both of them are doing harb. Both of them are, the verb is yuharib, right?
I get you, but okay, what if you're going to say that it's they who are fighting against them? How would you say that? You would say it like this. I mean, you wouldn't say it in the other way around. It's saying it's إنما جزاء الذين they are the ones who are يحاربون, right? So that one's thing. And if you combine that, I mean, one of the things which again, it's because we are lost from how to put the Quran in order. I mean, one of the good things about reading the Quran in order, which Aron is trying to do, but I think it's been very wrecked by the whole idea of the abrogation issue, is that you have to, the first verses which talk about a topic, they are foundational, right? The first verses which they are foundational for what comes next, right? And the first verse which talk about fighting in the Quran, right, which was revealed early on. So remember, this is like after the Hijrah, the first verses which were revealed about fighting. Okay, they are still applicable at the time of this verse, which is happening. Then they're not gone. Okay, so the Quran is teaching people things. Okay, and the first things are there, and then another thing added, another thing added. So the first clause, just like if you write a charter of war. Okay, what's the first clause that you in a civilized society you would want? It is that you do not fight against those who you do not be aggressors. You do not start wars, and that's what you have in the Quran, right? قاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين. They say, they will say this is abrogated. But how, when Allah says إن الله لا يحب المعتدين, God does not love them. Is that abrogated? Does God's love now change? The reason why you shouldn't be the aggressor is because God does not love the aggressor. That's never going to change. Okay, so that is the foundation. The foundation is you do not fight except against those who fight you, and that goes all the rest of the verses of the Quran which talk about fighting. They are under that umbrella. That's clause 1. If you were to write them all out, number 1 is do not fight against those who do not fight against you. Number 2 is this. Number 3 is this. Number 4 is this. And number 5, when you have prisoners of war, either ransom them or release them. There's no making them into slaves and stuff. This is something which the Arabs continue to do, unfortunately.
But don't you agree that if God wanted to make his message clear, he would have made a book, say the Book of War, right? There's like something similar to the Bible, which is a collection of books, right? So there's a book about Genesis, book about something else. So there would be a book of war or a chapter of war where it states clearly, okay, this is what you should do. This is what. Now you're putting everything together and trying to come up with a meaning for it, right? And
I get to what you mean. You want that would be. I understand what you mean. That would be like sort of the logical human way of writing a manual of war or a manual of this.
Well, I think it would be much more clear too, right?
Well, I mean, I think this way is still clear. I mean, it's not that it's not clear. It doesn't. You have to move aside some of the obfuscations, right? I mean, what I said there isn't a complicated idea, right? It is that when God says, "Fight only against those who fight you, but do not be aggressor." Truly, God does not love the aggressor. It doesn't take much brain power. It's not a difficult thing to combine that with this next verse that we're talking about. In the الَّذِينَ يُحَارِبُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ, those who wage war. Of course, it's talking about those who are the ones who start war. Right?
But the fact that it's scattered and it's all around the place, some people would not make the connection. Some people would not find it the way you do. Right?
Yeah, possibly. And I think that's part of what I mentioned before, that the Quran is also supposed to be part of this world, in terms of like one of the things you're saying about why is this world, why isn't everything so, why doesn't God just show himself in this world or something like this, right? Why isn't it this kind of thing? Quran is supposed to fit into this world. I mean, I see the Quran as very much so reflection of how the world is, right? How it fits into the way this dunya, this world is structured. Okay, it's not that you go outside and you discover God like that, right? Or everything makes sense in the world. You go outside in the world, things don't often make sense in that kind of way. But with a little thought, no, things do make sense. You put the laws of things together, you put things in their right place. So with the Quran, it's going to help sift people in itself. Yeah, I think the Quran is the single most polarizing book in existence right now. I mean, there's no book, I think, which is more hated by those who hate it, or more loved by those who love it than the Quran. Right? You'll find, I don't think anybody can sit with the Quran and will be sort of like in the middle for a very long time. Right? The more you read it, you can be pushed to one side or the other, either to accepting it more or rejecting it more. And that's part of what it's supposed to do. And one of the things it will do is, like I said, it will increase those in whose hearts there is a disease. It will increase their disease. You're right. Some people will look at this verse and they will say, يَسْعُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَسَادًا. These are these people who are opening up pubs, right? So they should all be crucified, right? You'll find some people who say we were talking about LGBTQ and stuff like that, and I definitely do not want any kind of violence or anything to happen to them. But some people will look at that and say, this rampant promoting of homosexuality is promoting facade on the earth, okay? And they should be. You have this, right? And I completely accept that the Quran will make some people more vicious. By what you're saying here, by how it's not. I don't want to say it's not. It doesn't tie you up in that kind of lawyer way, right? It's not like a lawyer's document, right, where you can't find a loophole, all right, where you can't cut it up. You can. Quran mentions that الذين جعلوا القرآن يضين, right? يضين, like in pieces, a bite, عض, right? A bite here, a bite here, right? They put it into different pieces, right? And then they can't, and then of course they oppress with it, and I fully accept that, and I think that's part of what of the functions of this world is that it will just like this world will increase the oppressors in their oppression, and at the same time it will be this world as it is, it's a mercy for those of faith, those of the good people in this world. They find a lot of rahmah and a lot of mercy in this world by themselves being a rahmah and mercy, right? They themselves, by the people who you'll find some of the happiest people in the world are people who are bringing the most happiness to others, right? And at the same time, in this world, you can become the most vicious tyrant, right? And the Quran fits into that. It doesn't. It fits into how the things are over here. And I'm not saying that as an excuse. The Quran, of course, mentions a lot of this. That like I said, فزادتهم رجسا إلى رجسهم, right? Talks about some of the surah. If a surah is, some of them it increases them in iman. Others زادتهم رجسا إلى رجسهم. It increases their filth upon their filth, or increases the disease in their heart, or ما يزيد الظالمين إلا خسارة وهو عليهم عمى, right? You have all of these things where the Quran is explicitly saying that it will do this. Okay? So I don't see it as I don't see, how can I put this? Not like I see basically what you're saying. I completely see it, and I accept what you're saying, but I see it as being sort of like by design, if you know what I mean. I don't want to say like design in terms of like a way, this is, but it is by design.
Intentional, you mean?
It's an intentional thing, just like the Quran is not. It is intentional. I mean, one of the things which I tried to mention.
So does that mean it's responsible for the atrocities that people did?
I think it can be used as justification. I don't think it means it's responsible, but I definitely believe it's going to be.
But if it's a book that could be understood either way, and people take it and understand it in a certain way, and then they oppress people.
I don't think it can be understood in that way holistically. I think it can be understood that way. Like I said, جعل القرآن عضين, if you chop it up. Like I said, if you take that verse that we were just discussing, and you just take it and run with it and use that as the flag or the stick with which to oppress people, yes, okay, without doubt. Okay, but holistically, okay, you can only do that by rejecting some things, right? Which is why, when the Quran talks about kafirun haqqa, those who are the most in kufr, they are the ones who accept part of the book and reject another part, right? So the ones who would take the verses to, for example, like for yourself, or the unfortunate thing of people wanting to kill apostates, right? They would take verses to use that, okay, but they will يكفرون ببعض, okay, يكفرون with the rest of the Quran, which is لا إكراه في الدين أفتكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين, all of it لكم دينكم ولي الدين, okay, all of this يكفرون بهذا, right? And that's what makes them even more in their kufr, right?
Well, my objection to that is apostasy still can't go with the verses you said, because yes, you can't force people into religion, but once they choose, there's no going back, right? So it's still, like, for me, it's logically coherent. If someone comes to me and says in Islam you should die, right? Even though I don't think in the Quran it talks about apostates specifically.
It does mention irtidad, right? So it doesn't من يرتد منكم عن دينه, right? But then what does it say? فسوف يأتي الله بناس يحبهم ويحبونهم, right? It never, when it mentions about irtidad in the Quran, it never mentions anything about killing apostates. And we're going to read Surah At-Tawbah, and one of the things I want to mention in that is in one of the surahs in that it actually mentions the apostasy of some people. Okay, it says, لا تعتذروا قد كفرتم بعد إيمانكم. Okay, do not, and this was during the Battle of Tabuk. There was no battle when Muhammad went to the north to Tabuk, all right, because he heard that the Romans were going to come and invade. He went up north, he found that wasn't true, he made a few peace treaties. But this is like in enemy territory, basically, in the army, and there were people who became apostates. But he didn't kill them, he didn't have them divorced from their wives, none of that, okay? And the Quran says, in لا تعتذروا قد كفرتم بعد إيمانكم إن نعفو عن طائفة نعذب طائفة بأنهم كانوا مجرمين. I think that's the verse. I have to look it up, but it says that if we forgive some of them, mean what? Forgive these apostates, right? We will punish others because why? Not because they were apostates, but because they were criminals or what they did. So again, when it comes to the issue of what they have, even in traditional Sunni Islam, what they say is that the Sunnah has abrogated the Quran. That's what they say. They say that the Sunnah, the hadith, man baddala dinahu faqtuluh, that's abrogated these verses. So they never, even within Sunni Islam, usually they don't look at these and say that the Quran is not clear on freedom of religion, right? I think it's very clear on that. But like I said, these are things which like I said, it can be used, but only if you chop up the Quran and make it into pieces and don't have a holistic view of it. And the same as in this world, I think in this world, if you chop up what you see around you in the world, you will come up to a very unfavorable view of God, right? If you start to look at all of the, you say, I'm looking at the injustices, why are people not, why is God not responding to prayers, all of this kind of stuff. But
I think if you only look at nature, you will come to that conclusion. Like the amount of pain and suffering in nature is just
in the animal kingdom and stuff like that. Yeah, like animals being eaten alive. Well, that's the norm, basically, right? The animal kingdom, like, if you can eat the prey without killing it, why waste your energy trying to kill it, right? So, like, you will find the Komodo dragons eating the gazelles alive, right? And like, there are so many graphical like videos on the internet. I mean, these things for me. I mean, you wouldn't say that these things. You wouldn't say, for example, a lion which eats a gazelle alive is being evil, right? It's part of its nature. Right?
It is. I would say if there's a God that created it in that way.
Sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I say if there's a God that created it in that way or allowed it to be in that way, I think that's an evil God, because there's no need for that suffering, right? So there is, for example, there's something called nature gift to people, which is a lot of people, when they think about fight or flight response, there's actually a third option, which is a freeze. Fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah. A lot of animals do that,
and the freeze is kind of gift of nature. When you you see a lion next to you and you at a certain point you get paralyzed, you fall to the floor, you can't do anything. That's, in some sense, that's a gift from nature, because if you're gonna die, then you might as well go out peacefully. But
go out quickly. I thought it was about, actually, so because I think the origins of that is so that the prey is not sure yet, is not sure that it's been spotted. So when it hears something, it freezes because it wants to make sure that it has been spotted or not. It's not sure, and it's not sure which way to run. So if you imagine like a deer in a glade or something, and it hears something, first of all, it doesn't know which way to run, right? It's not sure yet where is the predator. It just heard something, not exactly sure where it is. That's one thing. Second thing, maybe it hasn't been spotted yet. Maybe if it just freezes, it won't be seen yet, right? And then, of course, its senses go up when it stops moving. It can listen more intently and try and find the source of danger, and then it will run. right? But that's the first time I've heard of that kind of explanation for the freeze response, that it's to make you die quicker, more painlessly.
Well,
How would that be beneficial evolutionary wise?
I don't know. I don't actually know, but I was reading about a book about the trauma, and it says it's talking about that expression, the freeze thing, because a lot of people who have a trauma, they can't act, basically, right? When they relive the trauma. So say you're in a war and then you hear a loud noise, and then you look and you find your friends turned into pieces, right? Then you're gonna live that situation every time you hear a loud noise, or you hear gunfire or something like that. So the author was talking about how, like, you can get out of the trauma, and the author mentioned the freeze response, and she said it's like nature gift to people, basically. So you don't suffer much when you get caught, basically, in nature. But like I don't know actually which is like, why would freezing be beneficial? To be honest, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like evolutionary beneficial thing. The other explanation I think is more evolutionary viable. That you freeze to detect where first of all, maybe you will not be detected. There are some animals, hunters, which really they can only spot you if you're moving, right?
True.
They have more. Only when you can move can they really spot you, right? You have to be in motion before that happens. You know Jurassic Park. You've watched Jurassic Park, right?
No, I know the movie. I didn't watch it.
All right. Well, in that movie, and it's actually based on a fantastic book, which is better, of course, than the movies, as all books are, by Michael Cricket, who is a molecular biologist. And the whole premise behind that is, of course, that they find mosquitoes, which are sort of like, after they've drunk blood from a dinosaur, they get caught in the sap of a tree, and then they get covered up, and so they're perfectly preserved, and so that blood is perfectly preserved. So then they take the blood, they dig and they find these, they take the blood out, and they use that to engineer a dinosaur. And one of the things they do in that is they say, okay, we need to, because there'll be gaps in the DNA. So one of the things, they fill up the gaps with frog DNA, right?
Oh.
And so in that movie, you have one person who says, okay, because frogs can, I don't even know if this is even true, but because frogs can't see unless you're moving, you should just be very still. When the T-Rex is there, just be very still and he won't see you. So somebody does that, and of course he just gets eaten straight away.
Well, that's at least less suffering. Yeah, but like, back to the point, I think, like, don't you think when you look at nature and you see stuff like this, do you think it's really, I agree with you that it's not evil for the animal to do that, but like, don't you think if there is a creator, it's just an evil and sadistic way?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think so, because most of the stuff in nature, just like most of the stuff in humanity, I think it's beautiful. I mean, the things which look ugly and evil and things, they're less, okay. And I think that contrast is there. It's part of thing. So I don't look at it in terms of like,
But
I'm a very,
you can't look at a gazelle being eaten alive from the rear by commando dragons, and then the gazelle is a pregnant, and the baby is like, she's ready to give labor, and then the baby gets taken from the womb and eaten on the spot. Like, it's just disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't disagree. I mean, also don't forget that we're in a different world, right? I mean, the most thing I can say when it comes to, like, from the Quranic point of view, it says that ma min dabbatin, I forget fil ard wala ta'in yatiru bijanahihi illa umamun amthalukum, except that these are nations like you. ثم إلى ربهم يحشرون, and then they will also be returned to God. Now, what does that mean? Are they going to have a a Jannah and and a hell, or they're gonna have
But
I don't
like
know.
the whole thing could have been avoided. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot. When you talk about things this way, you could say a lot of things could have been avoided. I mean, do you think that if God exists, that there should be no evil in the world? Do you have that kind of premise?
Well, like evil. The notion of evil is something, in my understanding, a, a, a human notion, right?
Mm,
But like it's something like in the nature, like I don't know, man. Like it's really hard for me. I understand there are different beings, but like
mm,
they have pain too, you know. And
yeah.
when they are being chopped by sharp teeth
Why do you
from,
think? Why do you think that's more difficult to accept than, for example, human beings being evil, sort of, to each other? Do you think that's a bigger sign against God? That when animals do it, it's a bigger sign than when.
I think so, because there's no contingency there. There's no I wouldn't say so. Like a human, let's say I pick up, and this stuff happen. You'll find people who are uh, sadistic, and they prey on weak people, and they put them in a basement, and they torture them and stuff like this, right?
Hmm.
When they do stuff like this, well, this is not gonna help them in any way in their life to survive, or it's just like they are doing this thing consciously just to have fun of it, right?
Yeah.
In the animal world, they do stuff like this to survive. Even
Hmm.
like when the lion comes and kills the cubs in
Well,
order to mate with the
yeah,
leopard, right?
yeah,
It's
uh,
something behind it is still like
yeah. It's understandable. But I mean, have you seen killer whales playing with a seal?
yeah, I've
Okay.
seen that too. Yeah, that's
That
yeah.
that is not exactly.
Killer whales, they are like intelligent beings, right? So,
Mm,
but like to answer your question, when you look at this stuff, it makes you think, okay, then like these animals, they don't have conscious. They are doing what they are doing to survive. So if they
why
are,
why do you, why would you say they don't have conscience? So, like in this scale, especially, well, there's two. Okay, there's two. Let's break this down. There's two sides of this, right?
yeah,
There's the religious side of what we would think us compared to animals are, and then there would be the sort of like the. I suppose that wouldn't matter anyway, but the sort of like the materialist side where there's no God anyway. Then you would say we have. Why would let's talk about that side first in terms of the materialistic worldview where God doesn't exist, there's no soul, none of that. Okay,
yeah.
would you say why would you say in that worldview? Why would you say that they don't have conscience but we do? Or do you think we don't have conscience? There are some people who say no, we don't. There's actually no such thing as consciousness anyway. That
Well,
it's
I'm
just
I'm I'm talking in conscious in terms of, I'm not. I don't mean a drug. I mean ضمير,
oh
right?
right. So you're talking about a sense of
Conscientiousness.
yeah, sense of morality, sort of like
Yeah, sense of
um,
morality. Yeah.
okay, yeah. So you're saying they don't have. Well, I mean, have you seen those? There's some amazing like these kind of stories of like a lion or something or a leopard which looks after a baby gazelle. Have you seen those? Like
Oh,
that?
these are like, what happens is I read a lot about them. That happens is it's more like maternity.
Maternal instinct. Yeah.
Yeah, maternal insect, and um,
Well,
the
isn't maternal instinct a type of like said Damir, a type of conscious,
it is more of instinct,
more instinct?
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it is something that is. So here's how, like, I try to explain this in like simple terms.
Mm,
Uh, Imagine you have a software and a hardware, right?
mm,
So the hardware is designed in a way that it's gonna work no matter what, right? So,
yeah.
for example, your body, just like it's gonna, for example, your stomach is gonna devour the food you put inside it, and your body is gonna keep up the temperature, and your orgasms are gonna work, like your kidneys gonna filter out the water out of the uh, waste or something like that, right? And then you have the free will to do good or bad. So in terms of animals who are eating the prey alive, they are just doing the stuff to the hardware stuff. Just they are doing the stuff to survive, right? But then if you think about like uh, us the humans, when we torture people or stuff like that, it's more of what I call it a software thing, which is it's not something ingrained inside you. You have to do or
Do you think
something.
that do you think
Yeah,
that software thing is unique to human beings, or do you think any other animals, like, is there a spectrum, do you think, from that?
I think like there is when you look at some intelligent beings like
Say dolphins or
dolphins, whales,
monkeys,
dogs,
chimpanzees?
yeah, they display some sort of stuff, what we call it, like conscientious stuff. So, for example, there are crows that they pick up the tail of the seagull just to get a fix out of it, right?
Yeah,
Right?
crows do some strange things. I saw something about crows that if one crow, the crows can gang up on one crow and start to peck it if it does something bad or something. I forget what it is. It was a weird thing. I forget what it was, but one crow, there's one crow which is stealing or something, and then all the other crows gather around it and sort of like torture it almost, like they keep on
It
punishing
it
it.
it seems to me this is something that it's like survival mechanism, right? It's like for us, like the reason we hate thieves is something ingrained in us. It's like a hardware level,
Mm.
right? Regardless of the forms it takes, whether you punish the thief or rehabilitate them or you put them in jail or whatever.
Mm.
But the grudge or the hatred you have toward them is something innate in us, right?
Mm.
Same for the murderers, same for it is something for the survival of the species. It's
Mm.
I once heard I think it was Sabur
Okay,
saying
let me interject just one thing about that. For example, what about the hatred that people have? I mean, I don't know if it's always been that way, okay, but like now the hatred people have for rape, right?
yeah,
So rape is something which, of course, from that there does come procreation often, okay.
yeah.
So why would that end up becoming a something which the human being, or do you think that's rather the software, not the hardware?
No, that's also hardware
Mm.
because there is inside us there is something against injustice. We put ourselves in other people's shoes, right?
Empathy, yeah.
Empathy, yes, and it helps us as species to survive. It's not only for the individual. So when you find someone doing a heroic work, like go through the fire to save a kid, for example,
Mm.
well, for him, it's something that's very harmful, but he's doing it for the survival of the species. Even though, like, it manifests itself in, like, for the person who's doing it, he's not thinking about the survival of the species. He's
Mm.
he's definitely he's having a fix up, like he's getting something out of it, right? I don't know what's the correct term.
Mm.
Maybe maybe it's something maybe I don't want to talk about people in that way, but maybe he wants to get validated by the community. Maybe
Mm.
it's something more deeper. I think it is more deeper. I think
Yeah.
you just don't think about it.
Yeah,
And
there's some things we do and we don't understand why we do them, isn't it? We
yeah,
don't, the subconscious kind of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, I get you. But okay, so what about from the other point of view? So when it comes to that, so that's how you feel about it when it comes to nature and what they do when it comes to from a materialist point of view. I still don't. I mean, in the end, it all comes down to even what we have, what you're saying we have on the hardware or the software level. How do you get? Are you a hard determinist? Do you think that in the end, like whatever you, even the fact that you've, like, for example, no longer Muslim, or however you'll be in the future, all of, do you think all of that is determined by sort of hard determinism in terms of the molecules? You know, how, like, if somebody knew all of the movement and motion of all of the particles in the universe now, would it?
Yeah,
Or do you think?
it is. Yeah, I think that this is how I say it. So a lot of times, for example, I'm that type of person right now. Right now, I don't want to have kids, right? And a lot of people tell me, like, why? I tell them, listen, if you had my own genes, and you lived the same circumstances I lived, like exactly the same, you have the same genetic markup I have, you will come to the same conclusion I have, right?
Right now, yeah.
Right now. But the reason, like, let's say if you and I were brothers and we lived in the same circumstances, eventually you may come to a different conclusion, right? And part of it is, of course, we would not have the exact same experience. We may have the same experience, let's say, in the family, but like when we go to school, it's going to be different. But if it was a mere replica, 100%, the fact that you have a different, like, genetic markup, you may come to a different conclusion, right? And that's because, for example, I may be a very sensitive person, right? So I may feel the pain much more than you. And that caused me to think, okay, I don't want to have a kid who suffers in this world as much as I did, right?
All right. So ultimately, I suppose what we would say about, like the cruelty that human beings do to each other and animals do to each other, ultimately you wouldn't really say you'd say it's a moral issue in terms of how we can improve the situation that we are in, or
Yeah.
for future of the species, or etc. But there's nothing actually. You wouldn't say there's an ultimate overriding sort of like morality beyond that. That there's no deeper real morality, right? There's not morality in the end. Really comes down to making things better, right? In terms of like for like the species, right? And for the individual, like a balancing maybe between the benefits for the species, benefits for the individual. That's in the end what drives morality, right? You would
Yeah,
say.
so think about it this way. I heard once Sabur Ahmad asking someone, saying, if everything is like evolution driven, even morality, right? Does that mean when if we were evolved to be something like a beehive, does it mean if a girl wanted to have kids, we would go and try to kill her, right? Because that's what happens in the beehive. There's only one who could have kids.
One queen, yeah.
Yeah, one queen. And
Apart
he
from
said,
wood ants, there's an
sorry.
interesting thing. Yeah, there's actually interesting species of ants called wood ants.
Yeah.
Amazing, where they can have thousands of queens all working together. Anyway,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
and they
something.
could have different colonies, but they all
Yeah, you
work
saw that.
together.
Yeah,
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 I saw
amazing,
that.
isn't it? Yeah,
It's phenomenal.
yeah.
Yeah, and the answer to that, in my opinion, is absolutely 100%. We would look at it in a way that it would be exactly the way we look at the people who kill. Like the way you could look at someone who would kill and you have the same. Like, imagine if I come to you and there's a person who murdered 100 people and tortured them, and I came to you and said, "Hey, we should defeat this person." The way you
Yeah,
would look at me, you would be perplexed. How he's even thinking like that, right? This is exactly how we would look at it if we were developed. If we looked at a girl having kids,
well, be having keys. So we would
uh,
look at it as a huge crime.
it's a huge crime because it's going to destroy humanity or destroy
Yeah.
the tribe or destroy the hive.
Yeah. I get
Right.
you. Okay. All right. So let's switch it back to the other point of view, from like point of view of looking at these two things,
Yeah.
with God existing and the human being and the animal. So what you were saying, for example, in terms of like I don't look at it, even when it comes to the human beings being cruel and evil to each other. From my point of view, from like the Quranic point of view of the portrayal of God and how we are. There's a lot of, unfortunately, you've heard of the ideas of Jabr and Irja, which entered into, it's like early in Islam, this idea that basically everything you do is by God's will. Okay?
Yeah.
Like everything that you do, it's basically God has predestined for you. Predestination, idea of predestination. I completely do not accept that at all. I think, and there's the opposition view, of course, in early Islam, which was that of the free will people, but the Jabr won out. The Jabr and the specific Shami Irja won out. But anyway, the point is that, like, let's say now if I were to go outside now and somebody woke up and I slapped somebody, that isn't something which God is choosing. Okay, it comes down to I did that completely. Okay, it wasn't in any way something which God predestined or chose that I would do, or anything like that. Right, and that's what I would say, that the Quranic view of all of these things, which people talk about injustices. Why is there evil in this world? Well, two reasons. One is that this world is not meant to be perfect. God is not put in this world to be perfect, right? That's for the next world, right? In terms of like Jannah and stuff, but it's not meant to be perfect. It's not meant to be a place where none of these things can happen. And the second thing, that in the end, it's people who do it, all right? I mean, people like to put these things on God, and it's mentioned in the Quran, right? It says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَجْعَلْ فِتْنَةَ النَّاسِ كَعَذَابِ اللَّهِ, right? Now, among mankind, there are those people who make the fitna, the persecution of people that they do to each other. They say that is a punishment of God. It's not a punishment of God. It is the fitna of the people, right? They themselves, it's all on them. So that's what I would put it. Now, when it comes to the animals and things, I would pretty much say the same thing. I mean, this idea that animals don't have any kind of free will, they can't choose to do things. In a weird way, you could say that in these kind of things, I'm almost like they have the idea of a deistic, the idea of that God is a deistic God, that he created the creation and just left it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, but I am saying that when it comes to the human being and life on this earth and these kind of things, yes, God has given a human being, the chance to do what he wants in this world. Anybody can do, they have complete free will of what they're going to do. And God's will does not interfere with that, right? You don't, the person who goes out to murder somebody, God didn't will that to happen. That person did it himself. And so I completely put that. That's how I see it.
So here's my view about this subject. I think what you're trying to say or like talk about is the notion of a free will, right?
Yeah, in the end, that's what it comes down to, right? When you talk about, why is God allowing evil in this world? Well, first of all, he's allowing a world of freedom, and one of the results of that is people choosing evil.
Well, here's how I look at it. I think I'm gonna catch some heat for that. Okay, so let's say someone got out on the street and he murdered 10 people, right?
Okay.
Well, let's say on the moment, let's say he did this at 8 o'clock, right? 8 o'clock and 5 minutes. So 8 o'clock, 5 minutes before he did the crime, he had total free will either to get his guns and go out and kill people or do something else, right? And then he chose to take his guns and go out and shoot a crowd of innocent people, right?
Okay.
Now, I'm not negating that he made a choice, but I don't believe that it's totally free will. So that the notion of total free will, I don't subscribe to it. And this is the part where I guess it's going to be the most controversial. So if you look at the people who, let's talk about sadistic people, the people who get a fix of torturing people and killing them. Ted Bundy, for example. I'm not sure if you are aware of that person.
Yeah, I'm aware of him, yes.
Yeah, so let's say someone like Ted Bundy, okay? Now, I'm not sure, actually, this Ted Bundy might be the worst example for what I'm saying, because to what my understanding, he had a kind of a perfect childhood, right? He didn't have anything bad happen to him. But if you look at the majority of cases,
well, I mean, just to cut in with Ted Bundy, we don't. It's difficult to know everything that happens in somebody's childhood much later. So you could say he had a perfect childhood, but it will probably with a lot of more research, maybe there are things which are hidden, maybe some things which we will never know. But I'm just putting out there that it's not that easy to be completely sure that he had a perfect quote unquote childhood or very good one. But yes, go ahead. The majority of cases.
Sure. Well, majority of cases is you will find people who do these things. They have been subjugated to horrendous things when they were kids, and that in some shape or way has formed them to get the fix of that pleasure. So I'm gonna tell you an example. I had childhood friend. I don't know actually what happened to him. It's been a while. But this guy, when I was a kid, he was like my soulmate. Right? Used to go out together, play together, everything like that. Right? This guy had very peculiar situation in his home. So his family, like he used to get beat by his parents almost on a daily basis. And when I'm talking about beating, I'm not talking about like a slap. I'm talking about a beating where I saw the marking on his body. Like it's like
angry beatings, old school angry beatings.
Man, I can't put it in words. It's vicious.
Yeah, vicious.
It's like he would get like I literally see all the rainbow colors in his body. Literally, I saw green, I saw blue, I saw yellow, I saw orange. In his body, and not in a single place. Like he would show me more than 20 places in his body. He has marks. And this guy, he used to be fascinated with cats. He loved cats so much, right? So back home, we have a lot of stray cats, and he would befriend them. He would feed them. One day, he made a confession to me. He told me that he stopped like playing with cats, and I asked him why. And he told me that there are certain moments when he's playing with cats. It's like a button in his head when it switches on, and he can't control himself. He literally can't control himself. No matter how much he promises himself, he goes out and he starts punishing the cats and torturing them. Do the same thing that his parents used to do to him. To the
I
cats,
understand what you're saying. Yeah, this happens a lot as well with sexual abuse, right? Those who have been sexually abused, they will commit sexual abuses later. Now, okay, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. So I understand what you're saying, and I think that is a valid thing. But I think, okay, now we're going into a realm of such you're talking about such psychological things which happen in childhood, which will cause somebody to act out in a certain way later on, right? So things which happen in your childhood, your past, and they can influence how you will be, and then how you will be, and then you might end up committing crimes. Okay, I would still say that person still has a large degree of free will in that. Yes, there's a huge, this is a huge like temptation, a huge challenge for them, something difficult. Okay, but in the end, I would still say they do have free choice. And what I would say about that, to show that, is that in the end, look, our choices make us as well. That's the thing. So when somebody does something, okay, negative, okay, I mean, in the Islamic tradition, they talk about it as like, the Tarana ala qulubihim, right? You get like a black dot on your heart, and then you do a bad thing, get another black dot. It becomes easier, right? My physics teachers tell me, Khalid, do lots of problems, because doing problems like sinning, it gets easier every time, right? So each time you do something, you create a lot more networks maybe in your mind, if you put it to think of it in terms of materialism. You get a lot more of these connections in your brain to do something a certain way. You do it the first time, you do it again, and then you become, those pathways are established, and you do that. That's still part of your choice. And the other thing I would say compared to that is that you have an equal number of people who go through some of the most horrific childhoods, some of the most difficult, torturous things, and they come out at the other side, at the other end, better for it. They come out with more humanity, more compassion. They come out and actually are campaigning against these kind of violences. They're trying to stop these things from happening. There are many people who have been, like maybe like your friend, who's been abused by their parents in that kind of very vicious way, and they grow up to become advocates against this kind of beating to children, against abuse to children, and they come community to support people. So there is always, I really do believe that there is always a certain, your choices will, that you have many choices within your life about how to go, to do this, to do that, to do that. Okay, and each time you choose something, you move towards something, right? You move towards that way what you're choosing. The one who chooses goodness will be given goodness, right? The one who chooses evil will become evil, right? In the end, that does happen. So yes, you can have somebody in a very, very, situations which I would not wish for anybody, okay, but still, even from there, okay, there's hadaynahu sabilain, right? There's two ways, imma shakiran, imma kafura. You can end up becoming somebody who will be doing something right from wherever you start, and anywhere you start, wherever you put on this world, in any situation, you will find that there are people who have been in the worst, abusive, most evil situations, and coming out from that, they are incredibly virtuous, at the height of morality. They would never think of doing to others what was done to them. And on the other side, yes, you have people who, again, and it's because of their choices that those people got there. And on the other side, there are people who also, from that, they started small, like your friend here, right? Maybe he started small. One time, the cats are there, and he's okay. Let me do what what my mom did one time to me. He does it once, then does it again, and then suddenly it becomes something which, there's a choice that leads to that, I believe. Okay, we don't always know it. I think maybe it needs a lot of psychology work to look into it. And again, I don't want to diminish the effect that this can have. Some people can actually become mentally ill because of it, and people can become mentally ill and crazy. And for such people, of course, the pen is lifted, as they say, right? رفعت القلم. You can't. Somebody who has lost their mind and lost their ability of free will. Yes, you're right. Some people do lose their free will on certain things. I fully accept that. But generally, when you're talking about on a global scale, the evil of the world that people are engaged in, I would say that from most 99.999% of people's circumstances, wherever they start, whichever circumstance they are in, they have a choice. They have a choice. They could keep choosing virtue and become more and more virtuous, or they can descend further and further into a pit. Okay, and so I still am a very big proponent of the idea that we are, because that's how we experience it, right? We experience free choice, right? Even you, okay, you've had a lot of things in your past. I've had a lot of things in my past, and yes, there are things in our past that maybe tend to push us towards doing something, okay, but we always see in ourselves, that we can choose to follow that, or we cannot. Okay, we can have we can have the willpower to turn away. Okay, to turn towards something, to turn away from darkness and towards the light. Right, we can do that. So I think what you're mentioning is a very small subset of people, and at the same time, I wonder how many of those people could have, if they had battled against themselves, could have become better. Could have become, like I said, the two versions of themselves. A version where they become this evil, like Ted Bundy, or a person who becomes in the opposite. Right? It could happen, and it does happen, right?
It does, but so first of all, the same
I mean,
example.
I suppose we need statistics, right? We need to look at this thing.
Well,
If we're going to look at this,
I think even the like, and I see Nymphy here saying that even the criminology doesn't conclusively says that environment causes crimes, which is actually, I think I read that.
yeah.
And
So I mean, genetics and environment, they can all have an import. But this is why I said that if we're talking about now from a religious point of view, okay, that I mean, if we're going to talk about environment and genetics, you're still bringing everything down to sort of a materialistic level. All right. And so if we're going to talk about, because we mentioned already about from a materialistic worldview, from the point of view of the question, why is there evil and why does God allow it? Okay. I would say no, there is a part of the human being. We spoke a little bit about that, the soul and stuff like that, evidence. But there's a part of the human being, okay, which transcends his materialism, which is what the human being truly is. It goes beyond his genetics, and it goes beyond his environment. Though it's like a vehicle, like a human being in a vehicle. You can't, if you're driving a car, you can't make it fly. Okay, you have in the end your environment, your genetics. They will control a certain amount, but in the end, there is something which is allowing us to choose. Okay, to choose, and that's why in the end, that there's a whole idea of heaven and hell, right? So I'm very against this idea that God has made people do this or do that or predestined that or that. No, God is not going to make people do a sin, okay, or make them choose something wrong and then punish them for it. Okay, there is, and that's sort of like a mystery in terms of the universe, because when you think of creation coming from nothing, all right, as in nothing, not that God is there in space by himself. No, there's no space around him. All right, there is literally nothing but God in the start. Okay, and that's an idea very difficult to put in the mind. So where does free will come from? How do we get free will in the end? It's one of those mysteries, I think, that we are able to even have free will, but we do. I mean, I'm talking now from the religious sort of Quranic point of view. We are without doubt complete agents of our free will.
well, I'm not denying there's a free will, but I am denying that there's 100% of free will.
Yeah.
I think
I would
genetic
call them
disability.
I would call them influencing factors, though. I wouldn't call them, and the decision, like, okay, yes, there's influencing factors, and these are sort of like things which draw you or push you, or they're influencing factors. But when it comes to what is the essence of the part where the decision is made, where a decision is made for this or for that, that part where the decision factor or faculty, okay, I believe that part is completely in control of the human, except for those who, like I said, have real, genuine psychological problems. So I think, yeah. So I fully accept there are very strong influencing factors, but I don't know about. Anyway, I'll let you finish what you're saying.
Yeah, there is another also side to this,
Hmm.
which is if you think about reptiles, for example, reptiles, they lay their eggs, then they leave them, right? They don't tend to them.
Yeah.
It's not that they want to tend to them and they can't. they don't have that portion of the brain that even causes them to think that they
Yeah,
need
it's
to
their
think
nature. It's their nature, exactly.
right. That's what's called the reptilian brain, right? And then there are people who are born as psychopaths, right?
Yeah.
So that's something. Maybe there's an exception to these people because, like, they literally don't have. I'm not gonna say they don't have it in the physical sense, but at least in the practical sense, they don't have that aspect which causes them to feed for others, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so RB has a question. If you don't mind, I'm gonna just run to the washroom
Yeah.
quick while you
Yeah, go
answer
ahead.
this.
All
Okay,
right, go ahead. Yeah.
okay, I'll be back.
No problem. Actually, my God, it's been a very nice conversation, almost 2 hours and 40 minutes. Maybe we should, I'll try to call it quits before 3. Otherwise, we'll be talking all day. But anyway, you're saying here, what are your thoughts about on Dawah apologists and methodology? Well, I'm not sure about their methodology, but Uthman bin Farouk, Mufti Yasin. I don't know Mufti Yasir Nadim, I've never heard of him. Daniel Hakikachu, I have heard of. I'm generally not a fan of a lot of the Muslim apologists. A lot of them, to be honest, they've imbibed, I think, a very harmful way of speaking with others. A very harmful way. I mean, Uthman bin Farouk. The first time I came across him was on a stream where they were talking about, it was on Hamza's Den, and I was trying to become a part of that conversation, but I was summarily removed very quickly. And I saw the way he behaved there, even with other Muslims that came on, right? Quranis. I don't like that behavior. He does a lot of da'wah against Christians, okay? And a lot of the da'wah which is done against Christians, I think the way it's done is haram. I really believe that because the Quran says, لا تجادلوا أهل الكتاب إلا بالتي هي أحسن. Do not. When Allah says no, do not, that means that what's coming up is haram, okay? Do not debate with Ahl al-Kitab except by what is the best, okay? By what is the best, okay? إلا بالتي هي أحسن. Then it says, إلا الذين ظلموا منهم, okay? Those who are oppressors amongst them, okay? That's different, okay? Because when you're talking about the jidal. But we're not supposed to, like the way people speak to the Christians and the Jews, you're not supposed to debate them except by what is the best. Start off what is the best by the argument. I mean, look at the arguments which are given in the Quran, like when it talks about Isa and Maryam. It says, for example, kana yakulani ta'am. They used to eat food. Okay, a very simple argument. Okay. And the Quran says, look how we make it clear and look how they turn away. That's it. They will take that and elaborate it more, right? Say they used to go to, even to say now, they used to eat food and they go to the toilet. Okay, yes, they go to the toilet. But when you're speaking with them, why are you mentioning that? Why not just mention just they used to eat food, right? So I really think that it's, when they're speaking to Ahlul Kitab, they're doing it in a haram way, because not all of it, but a lot of it is because you have to. There's a reason why Allah is saying to your best behavior of them. Okay, لا تجادل أهل الكتاب إلا بالتي أحسن. So I'm not a fan of that. And Dani Hakikatu, I think he talks a lot about, the liberal West and this and the other. But look, I mean, I don't want to speak too much about them because in the end, I think their foundation on the Deen, how they understand the Deen, is flawed. So of course the da'wah will be flawed. Okay, of course the da'wah will be flawed. So that's why I don't think. Mohammed, look, mashallah, the time has flown, right? It's almost been 3 hours.
Yeah, I want to say, like, I don't mind to stay, but like, I want it to be too long to the people, and I know it may be late.
Yeah, it's also because people are going to be fasting. I mean, maybe not everybody on my. It's because some people, I don't. Have you heard the idea among Quranists that Ramadan is always in the September equinox around that time? Have you heard of that?
Oh no.
Yeah, so some don't think that Ramadan is now, so they won't mind. But for the rest of us, we are fasting and stuff, and so let's try and wrap it up by three hours, okay? Because we've done like
Yeah,
2 hours 45. Wrap it up by 3 hours.
that sounds
I
good.
don't know
So,
I don't know what we're talking about. Shall I leave the next 15, 10 minutes for questions, or was there something else we wanted to talk about? I actually
uh,
wanted to.
yeah,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Yeah. No, you go.
I honestly don't have anything in mind. I just wanted just to ask you more about the people, the perfect, like why God created this whole thing. I wanted to push back a little bit about,
All right. Yeah.
but I want
Yeah.
to hear what you have.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about, wasn't it? So yeah, and yeah, look, when it came to that, because that's why we stopped talking, right? About why is there evil in this world and why does this happen, etc., etc. So I basically feel that I mean, I mentioned this before, I think to you, and some of my viewers will know it from my video God's Endgame about the ultimate purpose of creation and this and the other. The human being. I think is going to be around for on this earth for a very long time, thousands of years, millions of years. I think that in the end, the human being will become a real deputy, a real Khalifa of God on this earth. So, in the Lord yarithu ibadi as-salihun. And, God said that I'm making a Khalifa on this earth. So in the end, I think that humanity is going towards ila khair, right? We're going to become real custodians on this earth. And I even think that, it could be that we will be the seeds for, I mean, Max Plankwell, what's his name, the scientist who worked on some of them. He said he actually mirrored exactly what I was thinking before I heard him. He said he has a very unique view that we are the only intelligent beings on in the universe, in the entire universe, and that in distant future, that if our descendants go out and seed the rest of the universe, um, then that they will not see us as insignificant. They were talking about the idea of the Copernican principle that some evidence which is showing that the universe
Just based on the numbers that we have, infinite universe, and the
no
life
the
could propagate.
the Copernican principle is about that. Copernican showed that we are not in the center of the solar system, okay,
Okay.
but there's still this idea that our galaxy could be in the center of the universe, right? Which is what some data is showing now. I put some of those clips in my video, and he was talking about that. But anyway, the point is that um, in terms of why we are here on this earth and all of that, that's what I think that we are here to. Like we said, the whole point of this, the human being on this earth, is to be tested, to be a Khalifa, a representative of the earth, a representative of God on earth, and that in the end, I think there's more to come after Jannah. I think Jannah is not the end road for the human being. And what God is looking for here is the intelligent people will pass. So that's another reason why, you say that the Quran and the why isn't it done in a perfect way that will make everybody believe? Why isn't God just doing, quote unquote, a better way to make everybody believe? Yes, He could make everybody believe and all that, but that's not the point of this. The point of this is ننظر كيف تعملون أيكم أحسن عملا, who is the best in action, نجعل الرجس على الذين يعقلون. And in the end, just to cut back on a lot of what we've been talking about is about belief. And I've mentioned many times on the stream with Aron and here to my viewers, they know that I don't consider the point of this world to be a believer in God or not a believer in God. I fully believe that somebody can not believe in God, not believe in any scripture, deny all religions, okay, and they can still become what God wanted them to be, as in past what this world is supposed to be, right? That we are supposed to be in this world to be a human being, right? To be what does it mean to be a human being, right? To just be what God created, a human being. Don't be a shaitan, don't be an animal, right? Be a real person of virtue, of compassion, of intellect, of hearing, sight, understanding. Those are enough to take anybody to guidance. You don't need to follow religion. You don't need to follow scripture. These things, they can help to guide. They can help to guide, but they're not an absolute must. All right, they're not an absolute must. The
But
human
like,
being.
couldn't God have like created these beings from the beginning?
Well, he created the angels, but that's a different project, right? So that there are already beings which are created like this, how God wants them. But a human being is a different thing. So why, you can keep on asking, why did God do this? Why did, and then you could even say, why did God even bother creating the creation in the first place? You could even come up to the conclusion that it doesn't really exist. There's a very interesting verse in the Quran, which I made a stream about, which is basically, I look at it as being an allegory of creation to being a shadow of God, right? So the verse is about, it's the verse of dhil. It says, ألم تر إلى ربك ألم تر إلى ربك كيف مد الظل ولو شاء لجعله ساكنا, right? It's saying, have you not looked at your Lord, how he has extended the shadow? What does that verse do? When you read that surah and you come across that verse, you think, okay, what's the point of this verse? God is talking about the shadow and this and yeah. So I think it's an allegory about creation. That creation is like, because if you imagine, it's difficult to imagine, but try to imagine before any creation. What is there? There's just God by himself. Doesn't mean God in a space. There is no space, right? So there's no over there. So when God creates the creation, where does he create it? If there is no over there, there's nowhere else, there's nothing but God. Where does he create the creation? When there's nothing else but God. There's no space in which to create anything else. You see what I mean? So I think the allegory is basically like the creation is like God taking some of his light, shining it on himself, and casting a shadow. Yeah, and even that shadow is on himself because there's nowhere else for that shadow to go, right? So creation is like a shadow of God, right? أَلَمْ تَرَ رَبِّكَ كَيْفَ مَدَّ الظِّلِّ, right? Do not look to your Lord how he extended the shadow. So extending the shadow is extending creation. And ultimately creation will go back, right? ثُمَّ قَبَضْنَاهُ إِلَيْنَا قَبْضًا يَسِيرًا. So I look at it in that kind of way. So there's this whole idea of, how real are we in terms of compared to God? God is the real, and there is no real but Him. The Sufis have this saying, right? كان الله ولا شيء معه وهو الآن على ما عليه كان, right? So God was, and there was nothing with Him, and even now He's just like He was. Okay, now this gets into some very mystical, metaphysical kind of stuff, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, asking the question of why did God even bother to create the creation in the first place? Okay, if He is self-sufficient, if He is, or He doesn't need anything, what need is there? What driving force is there for God to create the creation? And these are some of the things where we can try to think about them, but at a certain point, if you're going to be somebody who believes in God, right? At a certain point, you have to say, look, I'm not going to be able to relate completely, right? I'm not going to be able to get, my mind is not like the mind of God, so I can understand His perspective, right? There are some things you have to sort of like say, okay, ما كان الله ليطلعكم على الغيب. God cannot show you all of the unseen, all of the reasons, all of, and that's where comes those verses, هو لا يسأل عما يفعل هم يسألون. He's not questioned about what he does, but they will be questioned. So there are some things which are just not going to be add to that. So why is God?
Yeah, I agree. Though, like, if God was a tyrant and he wanted to do whatever he wanted, no one still can like ask, right? Or because end of the day, he can do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you flip that sort of in the idea of and I've heard that, of course, that who he's not questioned about what he does. I don't think anybody really genuine. Well, maybe now people do, but definitely nobody ever considered that God is a tyrant until modern times, right? People started to have this idea maybe God is a tyrant, right? But that's not what I mean when by that verse. I'm saying that in the end, you can't understand. There are some things which just will be beyond your. Even if you're saying, okay, God is absolutely good, all powerful, all everything like that, there will still be things which are beyond you, right? That you're not going to understand the driving force that God has to create. You're not going to understand that, right? You can't relate to that. All right, you can't relate to that to why God created in the first place, why create creation. And people have put ideas, some hadiths and stuff like, I was a hidden treasure. There's hadith Qudsi, كنت كنزا مخفيا فأحببت أن أعرف فخلقت الخلق ليعرفوني. And that's, of course, one of the Sufi traditions, because they are all about irfan, about gnosis. Just to translate that to people, it's saying that it's hadith Qudsi, which says God is quoted as saying, I was a hidden treasure and I wish to be known, so I created the creation so they could know me. All right. But going back to your question, why not just everything perfect? So if God is going to create the creation, why not just make everything perfect? Okay, why not just everything perfect beings, everything? Not again. Okay, we're going into a territory where we're not going to understand motives. To understand the motives of God on that level, the creation level, the creator level, is something I don't think we can reach to. That's just how I see it. You can sort of understand in different ways. Like, for example, if there is no darkness, there will be no appreciation for light, right? If there is no if there's no opportunity,
but let me
and
stop
you
you
won't
here.
understand that.
I just want to, like, my question is why he created the universe. I think your answer is because he has like sort of end goal to it, right?
No, I'm talking about the human being, just the human being, just
It's like,
our human journey. I think that ultimately that there's more after this world and after Jannah. I'm just talking about just that section of the human journey.
okay, and there will be people who are going to hell
Yeah.
indefinitely or indefinite.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things. I think the hell and the next world, a lot of these things are places of timelessness, right? So when the Quran says "Khalidina fiha," I think it's timelessness, and I also believe that they're not gonna be in hell. They're not gonna be literally, la yamutuna fiha wa la yahya, right? That they will neither be alive nor dead, right? So it's not going to be. I think it's going to be. And also, I actually wrote an equation for this, by the way. But you can have like a infinite something infinite on the x-axis, but with a limiting factor on the y-axis, right? So I believe that you can have somebody in hellfire can be in hell forever, okay, for all eternity, but at the same time, the punishment will not be above will be finite, if you know what I mean. I don't know if you can visualize that in terms of mathematics, but have you ever seen a limiting function where you
Yeah,
have it on the x-axis, it's going on to infinity. On the y-axis, okay, you have a limiting factor. So the curve goes up and goes up to a limiting factor. The equation I wrote was, what was it? It was 2 pi over c inverse modulus inverse tan, where c is the amount of punishment. So it's
C is
c
what?
C is the constant, which is punishment, right?
Oh my god.
So it's basically, yeah, it's. I mean, it's a metaphor in the end. In the end, but if we can do that in mathematics, right? In mathematics, we can make a function which goes on to infinity, but it has a limit on the y-axis. All right. That's how I view hell as being like, if you're going to say it's eternal, and it's not clear in the Quran, it is completely eternal, because it's very strange when you have the verse which talk about it. When it talks about Jannah, we'll often say Khalidina fiha abadan. But when it talks about hell, we just say Khalidina fiha. Except for, I think, 2 verses. For hell, it says Khalid. And also don't forget in the Quran, it says Khalidina fiha illa ma sha'a rabbuk. Except as God wills. And also Khalidina fiha ma damati samawati wal ard illa ma sha'a rabbuk. So there seems to be some limiting things going there. In the end, the bottom line in all of this, because we haven't seen hell, we haven't seen it happen, and people want to judge God about hell now without even it happening, right? God is waiting to judge us for Judgment Day, but we are judging God for hell right now when it hasn't even happened, right? The bottom line, what is completely clear in the Quran, is that nobody will receive even an iota of injustice. And I mean that as in the justice that we understand in this world. It's not like, some people want to say that, it's in God's sight, it's just. No. The justice that we understand here is the same justice that God understands, which He's commanding us to be just in this world.
Well,
So
the thing is, there's no crime that deserve infinite punishment.
But that's
No
what I'm
matter.
saying. Not infinite punishment. I'm saying finite punishment. Finite punishment. okay, but it will be in an infinite time, okay. And I know that might seem like, hey, that's a contradiction, but like I said, we can square that in mathematics, right? We can do that. You can have an infinite function which has a limit, and so that's how I see hell. I see hell, yes, it will be eternal, but it will not be infinite. Eternal in time, but not infinite in punishment. All right, I don't believe, because the Quran is explicit on that. لا يظلمون مثقال ذرة. Right, nobody will be wronged even the weight of a gnat, a weight of a small ant. Okay, ما يرى مثقال ذرة شر يرى. Right, ما يعمل مثقال ذرة شر يرى. It's there will be, nobody will be given any injustice. So we have to take, me as somebody who believes in the Quran, I have to take those explicit verses as being what they are. And when I look at the verses which talk about hellfire, okay, I put them together with that. In the end, there will not be any injustice in hell, right? Nobody will be given infinite punishment. No, I don't believe that, because Quran doesn't say infinite punishment. It says nobody will receive a punishment. إلا ما كنتم تعملون إنما تجزون ما كنتم تعملون. That's it, right? So that's how I see that. But how did we get onto that topic, by the way?
We were trying to square things off, so
let's square things off. Let me just see what maybe somebody, if anybody has any quick questions for Mohammed, who's given us his time. Thank you so much again, Mohammed, for coming.
Well, thank you for having me, man. It's very hard and rare actually to find someone who's like willing to like have this conversation. It wasn't like confrontational. It was like just a normal conversation.
Yeah, this nice little chat. I'm thinking of, I want to do more of these kind of conversations with other people, but and I'm not sure what I'm going to call this series. I've written it here as Campfire Chats. And I thought maybe that's a good title, or I was going to call it bouncing thoughts, like people will bounce off each other. I'm not sure what I'll go with. But yeah, if anybody has any very quick questions for Mohammed, maybe shoot them after him. Otherwise, we'll try to end this. Let me just look very quickly. Look, my kids, I need to make them go to sleep because I've been awake this long. They're taking liberties and staying awake to chat away. So let me just see very quickly. What are your thoughts on that? I did that already. Unfortunately, most are YouTubers before Muslims. Okay, talking about the da'wah people. Yeah, it's very difficult for that. Let me see, what is this? God created a world in which there are more than enough provisions for humans to establish a just world, but we are failing. Okay. Yes. Assalamu alaikum. What's your opinion on the YouTube channel Quran Centric and his views? Yes, I know him. Joseph Islam from Quran Centric, wonderful brother. I like him a lot. Of course, I don't agree on many things. Like I do believe in the salah is actually a ritual salah, normal ritual salah. His view of Hur'in as well, I don't really agree with that, but I definitely highly recommend him. He's a very, he bases a lot of his research in the Quran on the root words, and he completely ignores all history, all hadith, all of that, which is of course different from me. I don't reject all hadiths, I don't reject all the history, and generally I'm just for me, I just realign certain things. Okay, it's more about, I think that the Quran, that the ideas of religion are not arranged hierarchically as they should be. Okay, but yes, I know that channel. Let me see who else. Do you have any quick questions? The righteous will inherit the world, and it will be all that Muhammad is describing, but after the filtration process of this life to separate the good from the bad. Yeah, so there are some people, of course, who understand that Jannah will be in this world before the next, and I can see that definitely. Duration's severity, exactly. It says, but duration is infinite. Yeah, exactly. So I'd say of hell, it is about being eternal, but the punishment in it is not infinite. And I take a lot of cues. I know me and Mohammed, we spoke about this a little bit, the NDEs. So even in that video, God's Endgame, I put in a lot of NDEs. NDEs talk a lot about how they've entered a world of timelessness. There's no time, right? The things seem to be happening, and there's no time. So that's how I think what really means khalidina fiha means that akhlada ila al-ard in the Quran. You have that imagery of somebody who akhlada al-ard means stayed in that state, not changing. So that's what I think. Khalidina fiha, right? Staying in that one place.
And time is a property of this universe, so it's not hard to imagine something without time.
Yeah, I mean, time is what I used to think about this deeply, but I came to this idea that time is basically the ability to have two objects in the same space, right? So it would look like where you're sitting right now. Okay, you're taking the area of where there's air. Okay,
Yeah.
so right now you can't have, the only way you can have two things in that same space is sequentially. So you have to move out of that space, and then the air will move in.
To have something, yes.
Yeah, so time is sort of like it's the ability to have an object in the same space, but it has to happen sequentially. There's something like that. But I thought about that stuff a long time ago. I've abandoned a lot of my sort of philosophical kind of thinking because it doesn't really help much. Let me see, what is it? See, there is nothing to fear if one is sincere. Yes. The only reason one would fear an unjust judgment is if they aren't doing justly. Yeah, again, that's I really believe. I mean, it's thing. May God bless them. And this is the last one. Amir, thank you for these comments. By the way, God has death to sleep, and there are examples of people revived and feeling they slept for just a day. Yes. Okay. And it says here, last one, use science as a foundation of your belief in God. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. All right, Mohammad, look, I guess we'll wrap this up. Again, I have to really commend you for coming on. And, I knew, to be honest, from speaking to you before, I knew we'd have a nice conversation. You're a very chill person. Like me, I don't think you get ruffled too easily. I don't know. Do you find that people get annoyed with you for that? Because I feel like you're kind of like me. There are some people that really get annoyed with me because I don't get angry at them sometimes.
Well, I find people I get annoyed with me because I'm open to ideas, right? They rather have me like be committed to a certain view, while in reality, like I'm open to different things, and I really like to listen to what people have to say, right? Because I can change my beliefs if I find myself wrong on something, It's like I wish, part of me, and wrapping up, a part of me was hoping, like when we talk here, I want to send this, and I'm glad it's recorded because I want to send it to my brother. Because we had a conversation the other day, we were talking about God and infinite regression and what got you. Like the conversation got so heated. I had to tell him by the end of it, like, man, can you speak like me? Can you speak normally? Like, just why does it have to be so heated?
Yeah.
I hope, like, when I send it to him, he would understand what I'm talking about, because it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I've found that it's sometimes people just have that nature, and you have to sort of accept them in that kind of way. I mean, I don't know, to be honest, even with myself, if it's something which I developed or I was always like, I've forgotten, to be honest. But because a long time ago, I was very, like when I was young, when I became more religious, I was definitely more inclined to the Tasawwuf and Sufism, and that is, I think that's one thing which has saved the soul of Islam in many ways. Without that, I think Islam would be an even worse state. But that is a very thing where you're very focused, much more, first of all, trying to eradicate character flaws, trying to make yourself not become somebody who just becomes angry all the time and things like this. So I don't know if it's something which I developed there and it stayed, or if I forgot if I was always like that or not. I don't remember. But I'm definitely sure that there are some people that they can't discuss things in a very calm way. They get very passionate, and you have to just sort of like accept that and sort of let some of the things that they say wash over you, and try to filter out when they are speaking from passion, and when they are, if they're saying things which they're trying to be hurtful, really, if they really are trying to be that, or they're just in the moment being passionate. And so, for me, I've sort of I've sort of accepted that people are like that, and that's just
I to be honest, I was much more confrontational with when I was younger, but like
it changes the genes as well. It changes the
it's mostly because how like I tend to look at my previous beliefs, not necessarily religion, but like look at them and look how idiotic some of them were. So I kind of like have like softer spot for dumb people like me. So I take things easy, I don't try not to be like harsh on people.
Yeah, especially if you have like, I don't know, I think it would be good if you could maybe I mean, you've already got YouTube account, so maybe open up a YouTube channel, because I think it's missing a little bit in the sort of quote unquote ex-Muslim space. I mean, I don't watch many of the videos right now, but it was a real loss when Hassan Radwan. I don't know if you've heard of him. Hassan
Actually,
Radwan.
I need to check him out.
He's
There's
fantastic.
actually
He stopped. He retired from all this stuff. But he was a voice, the type of voice which was needed, because he never used to mock. He never used to try to insult or make things angry. He was just his videos are fantastic, very critical of Islam, of course. But he would just he's one of the first public ex-Muslims, and he actually used to be a very religious person. He was a teacher in an Islamic school. He was very community. He speaks Arabic as well, and he translated the book Mihnati Ma'al Quran. He translated that into thing. He also translated Ibn Taymiyyah's work of something we just talked about hellfire, not fana nar, about how the hellfire will come to an end. So he was fantastic. But other than him, everybody I see, they always want to do a lot of like just antagonize.
antagonizing.
Antagonize for no
There
reason.
is actually someone I just learned about recently. David Rajul Al-Kahf. Did you hear about?
No, I haven't. Like I said, I don't watch much, but send them if you like him. I'll definitely have a look at him.
Oh yeah, definitely you have to check him out. He passed away recently. It's not honestly, it's not sure. Some people say it was suicide, and the official thing is he had like in the official documents it says that he had extremely low blood pressure or something like this. So we don't really know what happened, but he's certainly, I'm looking through his catalog of videos now. Certainly worth watching, because he's not antagonizing. He doesn't actually focus much on atheism. He just says what he thinks like about his philosophy.
I'll check him out. There's one in Arabic. There's only one which is this one. Is this guy in Arabic? He's in Arabic, yes.
He's in Arabic, yeah.
Okay, I'll check him. The only one in Arabic which I know is he makes me laugh so much. I don't know if it's because he's Egyptian, but Sharif, what's his name? Sharif Gibran or Gabriel. What's his name? I forget. He's in Egypt. The guy who Sharif Gabir, is that his name?
I'm not sure.
You've never seen him?
Do you mean there's one? Do you know what's his name?
Let me try and find it right now.
Do you know Hani Salim?
No, I don't know.
Critical faculty.
Okay, I'll definitely check. Yeah, that's it. Sharif Gabir. So if you write it in English, Sharif Sherif Gabir. He's good. Okay, of course I disagree with him a lot of times. But one of the things which he has one video which is so funny. I don't know if you've seen it, guys. People who are watching, be warned, this is an extremely sacrilegious and offensive video. But for people who know Egyptians, it just makes me laugh every time I watch this. It's just so funny.
Oh, he
a
has
video
so
called
much
Muslim meets God.
subscribers.
He has, huh? Say it again.
He has so much subscribers, right? He has like
Yeah,
350.
huge. Huge. Look for his most popular. This is his most popular video as well. It's called Muslim Meets God. Just listen to that. You'll be in stitches. So funny.
I'll certainly check that. So let me send you also, what's his name? Critical Faculty.
Yeah,
This guy, this guy is he streams in Arabic and English. Both of them are nice.
I'll have a look at it. I mean, I'd like to have time to look at all of these in depth. Right now,
I think if you got to check one of them, check David Ajal.
Okay,
yeah, I think like the more I read up, like listen to his stuff, he's really a well-read person. Yeah.
Okay.
He passed away. So.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if he would be happy with us saying Allah yarhamu, but Allah yarhamu.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah.
I find that awkward, speaking when about ex-Muslims and stuff. Do I say that or do I not? Do they they think I'm...
No, but like, be yourself. Till this day, like, if someone asks me how are you, I say Alhamdulillah and stuff like this. Because like culturally, I'm used to it.
Yeah. Sorry, J.A. We're actually wrapping up now. We said we were going to wrap like 20 minutes ago, but we're still going. Yep. But we will wrap up now. I'll leave this on, which is from Amir. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir.
Mohammad, thank you both for the stream. You're welcome. And once again, thank you so much, Mohammad. And for everybody else, we'll end it there. When we have our normal stream on Saturday. I'm not going to be presenting something, but somebody else contacted me saying that they would like to present something about the idea of riba in the Quran, something which I don't know anything about. I have no idea about finances, and I don't understand. I don't think it's what people normally think, which is that it means interest and stuff, but I have no idea what it is. So somebody's going to be presenting about that, and it will probably be the last Caravan of Contemplation stream for a while. I just want to put it on the back burner for a little bit. And then we'll see. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Take care.